everybody, and welcome to the Unwelcome Podcast. This is your host, Mark Owsley, and we are gathered here today to watch and react to and comment on and analyze the Oklahoma gubernatorial debate. And I am joined today by Senator Jake Merrick to offer his expertise here, and Riley Flack, who is a father and an activist in the Oklahoma community. Thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate it.
Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good.
So it's good to be here.
Now, and we this is going to be a kind of a freewheeling deal. We're gonna watch what the governor says. We're gonna watch what Joy Hofmeister says. We're gonna offer our commentary as it's going on. So this is a play-by-play, a blow-by-blow, as you say. But before we get into that, I want to ask my guests. Here's the first blanket question. You know, we obviously, Senator, you're a Republican. Riley, I believe you're a Republican. You support Governor Stitt, as do I. But we've also had our issues with him in the past. But what is it that you need to see from Governor Stitt tonight in this debate to show that he is going to follow through on the many promises he's made and work as hard as he can to keep Oklahoma on the right track, both culturally and politically, and our government, and in our government? Senator Merrick?
Well, first, thanks for having me on. It's always an honor. And, you know, we want to see boldness. I think we're in an hour and a day in our country and our state where we need to see our leaders speak to issues without hesitation in a bold way that gives direction and leadership to the state, saying this is what we will be doing. And we've seen Stitt do this in the past. And so I applaud him in that. He stepped out boldly and he said, this is where we're going. And he's campaigned and actually followed through with his effort to make Oklahoma a top 10 state economically. But I believe where the concern is in the state is with the values, the Oklahoma values that we hold so dear. Are they being compromised or swept under the rug as we're on this journey to become a top 10 state economically? We all are concerned about the economy with inflation and all the things, the recession that we're in. We don't see that going away anytime soon. So what kind of action is he going to take in the state, help give some relief to the people, financial relief? Are we going to see tax cuts? You know, he's been talking about tax cuts. I would like to see some follow through. What is he going to do, though, with the gender reassignment issue that we just dealt with in special session? So we have these two, I think, avenues. We have this economic topic, an area that he's shined in, he's done really well in. But while we're pursuing that, are we sweeping other things under the rug, dismissing our values or minimizing them? I want to see them at the top of the priority list, while not also compromising our pursuit to make this a prosperous state.
Yes, well, I would definitely agree with that. Riley, what are your thoughts? What do you need to see from Governor Stitt tonight to solidify further your vote for him and your support for him?
Well, I could not watch, and my vote is solidified. I'm familiar with Joy. I know what I'm getting with Joy, and I know what opportunities I have with Stitt because he's shown that he is willing to step out on certain issues. I think he's got a real opportunity, just like DeSantis, to step forward and say the truth. And it isn't, it's become a hard thing to do. I'm not sure exactly how. But Jake, you're right. I think, in an effort, just like a star or a rapper or somebody that signs a deal with a company, they are now beholden to that. And so they sell their soul to become top 10 state or whatever. Like we cannot ship our values down the river in order to become prosperous economically, because we know that's not how you build sustainable, that economic growth.
Yeah.
That's just fake growth. So I just want him to be bold and tell the truth, and that ain't hard. So we'll see what we can get.
Yeah, well, I think you're both right. I think the Governor Stitt should be commended for the things that he has done well, and there are many things along that aspect. Whether you're talking about the abortion issue, whether you want to talk about the COVID issue at different points, he helped keep as many things open as he possibly could. But there is a concern. There is a concern that he has such a focus on the economy that he's willing to sell out some of the values that go along with Oklahoma as well. And I think it's also important to remember that we have this thing called the Oklahoma Standard, right? And I think that's a good thing that we should bring up here. And the Oklahoma Standard, which was birthed out of the Oklahoma City bombing and all of that, that showed that the community can gather around and do the right thing when it's necessary, right? And sometimes that means doing the unpopular thing. And recently we've seen Governor Stitt stand up for that in a way, but also it seemed to be hedgy. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Jake, or Senator Merrick, you were talking about this special session that happened with before in our pregame show here with the tax cuts. Can you explain to us a little bit what you saw there and what happened and what would you have liked to have seen and where can we do better in the future?
Well, we had a special session called from the Senate and the House. They agreed on a special session to later at some point deal with ARPA funding and the distribution of ARPA funds. And so that special session was called, and then tangent with that was the call by the governor for a special session to deal with tax reform. And so it generated publicity. It generated a lot of excitement, especially considering where we're at as a nation with the inflation and the hard times that we're seeing, the gas prices and things like that. And so, there was a call, but there was no direction. And so we ended up gaveling in and then gaveling out because there was no action requested by the governor. So there was a call, but no action points. And so,
okay, can you explain that for us for a second? So just for us laymen who may not understand. So when a governor calls a special session, he usually gives an outline of what it is he wants to accomplish, right? Is that what you're saying? And that was not necessarily there for this special session on the tax cuts?
That's right. You have to have a call for a particular topic, which that was there, the tax reform, but nothing concerning that, no specifics. And so there was nothing for us to consider as the legislature. So because there was nothing to consider, there was nothing to do. And so it was pretty much a waste of our time and left us with a lot of question marks, like was this even called in the beginning, in the first place? And so I think there's good intention there. I think he does want tax reform, and I do believe that we'll see some in the next session. I really hope so. There is expressed interest in seeing us reduce or remove the grocery tax and reducing or removing the state income tax. So I believe both of those would be tremendous relief for the state of Oklahoma. I would vote for that. I was excited about possibly voting for that, but there was no vote to be had. So, I'm not sure why. I think there was good intention there, but no follow through. So I'm hoping on the backside next session that we're actually going to see some substance that the next legislature can vote on.
That would be good to have some direction as to what you guys need to actually vote on and change, and that's what the governor is supposed to do. So I think that highlights the point that we like a lot of what Governor Stitt is going to do or has done and what he says he's going to do, but we need to make sure there's follow through. Riley, I want to talk about tax cuts with you for a second. So your dad, you pay for food. You pay for gas. You know how much a gallon of milk costs, right? To put it out there. How much would tax cuts on the grocery tax mean to you and your family at home, and which would underscore the need for follow through in situations like this from the governor?
Sure. So luckily enough, I haven't gone hungry, thank God. But golly, things have gotten real expensive. And it doesn't matter to me which taxes we cut. Let's cut a lot of them.
Yeah.
Like if it's dicey to do the grocery tax, there's another one we can cut somewhere. We can taxed in and taxed out. It's interesting, Jake. You mentioned he called for a tax relief. Is it? Now this is just ignorant speaking. Isn't it the legislature that would draft and the leadership that would come up with the plan along with Stitt, or do they just rely on Stitt to drop something as far as a plan?
That's a good question.
Well, when you have a call, then you're expecting the one who makes the call to have some sort of legislation in place, a bill to consider.
And the governor can't draft his own bill and has done that kind of thing before. Or
has his legal team. And so you don't want to, if he makes the call, then it's not on the legislation to draft something and then back to the governor for him to consider. So whoever makes the call has that bill in place, or at least partially drafted.
Right. So if you're making the call, then it's your job. There should be a reason for it. Hey, here, I want you to consider this. The legislature takes the language, they debate it on either side of the house, and make sure that there's a compromise there. They pass it, send it back to the governor. But the governor can't initiate, if he's making the call, what he wants to work on, the language he wants to see, and what he wants to push.
Yeah,
right?
just from a layman's perspective, if the legislature was interested in cutting our taxes to help us, pointing the finger at Stitt, makes me a little like, hey, well, why didn't we come up with the plan at the legislature if that's what we want to do?
During this last special session, it dealt with, the topic was broad enough that we could have expanded this special session and addressed tax reform. And I signed a petition along with 16, I knew there's at least 16 others. Thank you. To expand the last special session to deal with tax reform. And so, I'm sure that we can find that list of those who signed and those who didn't. But big question mark, why was
I wasn't pointing at you, Jake. Yeah, I wasn't pointing at you. I was pointing at the leadership, who we all know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there was an attempt by some in the Senate to do just that this last special session. While we were there, might as well address it because everybody wants it. But leadership didn't consider it a priority at that time. So
right. Well,
child mutilation.
Yeah. Well, and let's get into that, because when you talk about tax cuts, that is a measure designed to limit the effects of inflation in the economy, right? So you're taking away money that would be paid to the government, putting it back in the taxpayer's pocket. But at the same time, right before that, we're voting to spend $1.9 billion in federal funds that come from the same taxpayers. So that is just going to increase inflation anyway, right? And so I would make the case, gentlemen, and that he could have done he could have killed two birds with one stone. He and the legislature could have killed two birds with one stone. He could have limited inflation and protected children by just denying all of the ARPA funds and sending it right back on to Biden. Would you agree with that, Senator?
That's why I voted no on every one of them.
Right.
The only one I voted yes on was the drought relief, because that came out of the budget, the state budget, the money that we already had. So it was not federal money. Right. And so the rest of it was federal money. And so I made the statement on the floor, why are we going to contribute to increasing the overall national debt when all of us are preaching that we need to have a budget, we need to reduce the national debt, but when it comes time for us to actually have an opportunity to do that, we thumb our nose at it and we miss the opportunity. So there were two opportunities. We voted earlier on in that same special session in May to receive the funds and to disperse them. So everybody voted yes to do that. I voted no, along with a few others, on all of those to even take on the responsibility of dispersing it. And then the argument was made on the floor by the pro tem that, hey, we've already voted to receive and disperse this, so we're kind of obligated now. Well, you can back out at any time. So
that's right.
You should have voted no in the first place.
Right. Well, and my point there is that injecting that amount of money into the state is going to increase inflation. In any way, shape, or form, it's going to make things, and it's not going to hurt the people that get the money, right? It's not going to hurt the organizations. It's going to hurt the common person who's buying milk and eggs and paying rent and all of those things. So, when you combine that a little bit with the desire to cut taxes, well, we could have had a $1.9 billion tax cut. Like that, and so I think that underscores a little bit of the issues that we may have with Stitt in terms of whether or not there's a conservative-minded economic agenda there sometimes, right? But then again, they're going to make the case. Well, everybody else is getting the money. Why don't we take it? Well, I think the perfect reason for that was a lot of it's being used to fund things like child transition services, right? That I brought up here in the state, and that the Senator Merrick was against, that Riley here was against, and open critics of that. That's the perfect reason not to, right? It is when you're going to build an infrastructure for 70 beds in a new facility for behavioral health. Well, we all know what that's going to end up going to, especially when we see the pipeline coming from schools and school counselors pushing this agenda onto kids. And so I think that's something that the governor has made a promise, right? He has made a promise that he will lead the charge come February, the next session, to end that practice, to make it illegal, to make it a felony crime. That's what I'm hoping for, and to stop that throughout the state. And I think that there should be a moratorium on any, or a revocation of any physician who performs those procedures or gives those medications for the purpose of transitioning a child. Riley, what would you think about that?
Yeah, it's got to happen. There's no other option. So when you think of the OU Children's Hospital, did they get some new mental health professionals, or are they still the same ones, do you think?
Oh, I believe they're the same ones, and I believe everybody who was employed by Roy G. Biv will still be there in some other capacity, even if they don't talk about that program outwardly anymore. That's been my concern, because there's very little oversight, right?
So like when everything is allowed, it seems, to be very superficial, and I think it's the elephant in the room. It's the reason he can't reject, and the legislature can't reject $2 billion is because we have a fake news media that would just lambast it. And that is a consideration. So and it's so unfortunate because we can't get, there's only many of us, and we are, being censored actively. And so we can't get the truth out, not to mention I've got a full-time job. So I know, I don't have the ability, I rely on Mark and Jake and there's not very many of us that I can go to and try to get what is actually happening. So we're just dealing with a big monster, and so is he. But we need somebody to combat that and try to pull it up by the root.
Right. Well, and that's what we're trying to do here on the Immobile Podcast. I think that's what, you got lots of people trying to do that and trying to break through. But you're right, we do get censored. And by the way, super chats are open, guys. If you want to donate to what I'm doing here, that's how I'm funding this. If you can do super chats, super stickers, all those things. Like, subscribe, share the channel. If you want know people who want to watch the debate and watch what we have to say about it, share the video. That's always a great way to do it as well. But yeah, there's a lot to break through. And so let's talk about the monster for a minute. We got about 10 minutes before the debate starts. The monster, I think we would agree, is represented by this woke media establishment controlled by the Democratic Party and a lot of what Joy Hofmeister represents here. And so there's been some concerning polls coming out that put Joy ahead or within striking distance here. And Jake, you've been up on the Hill. You've dealt with a lot of these people. What would happen to the state of Oklahoma if Joy Hofmeister is elected governor of Oklahoma?
Well, we saw a glimpse of it during COVID with the mandates, the tyrannical actions taken towards our children, with forced masking, with closing down schools. We know that's where she came from. So let's just look at what she already allowed. She already allowed that state. So what makes you think that she would let up on that? No, I think that it would be accelerated. And the reason she's vying for this higher position is for her to be able to wield more power and enforce those liberal ideologies across the state. And, the school systems, the unions, they have a lot of sway in our communities. Right now, I'm over here in Tulsa right now, and I just met with one of the representatives from Moms of Liberty over here, and doing a lot of great work over here because the union school system over here in Broken Arrow, man, we're seeing some just straight up woke liberal ideologies being forced on the children, and very pushing back against anyone who tries to advance any conservative causes. And so, all of that was either originated or fueled by Joy Hofmeister as the state superintendent. And so I believe we'll just see that on a greater scale if she's elected governor.
I couldn't agree more, and I think there's a lot of it's harder to unify Republicans or conservative-minded people because we all think for ourselves, right? We don't follow a party line. We don't follow an ideological agenda. We try to look at things, I think, on the whole more objectively. And let me just say this, Senator Merrick and I both have concerns about school choice, right, and how that has been brought up in the past. But I'll tell you this, I'd rather have school choice than Joy Hofmeister as governor. And that is because at least you would then have some oversight from a governor or a legislature that you would trust, that wouldn't be pushing the woke agenda into the schools and the COVID lockdown agenda into the schools without any place to go. And again, I've been open critic about this. Anybody who's watched my channel, okay, about my concerns about school choice. But when we're talking about, and this goes to Jenna Nelson too, right? Because the one thing, and I did a podcast earlier today on this, the woke teacher pipeline that comes from universities out through into the child mutilation complex is done through school counselors. They're the middleman here. And I want to point out that Joy Hofmeister in 2021, May of 2021, put $35 million worth of ESSER funds towards making new school counselors to have a 200-to-1 ratio from a 400-to-1 ratio. Well, if you look at ASCA and the American School Counselors Association, ladies and gentlemen, they're openly saying they are master manipulators and they are there to indoctrinate your kids. And they're there to force teachers to indoctrinate your kids and to force administrators to indoctrinate your kids. So, and that's all being done in public schools right now in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So, I just think that's a point. So, Riley, what are your concerns about a possible Joy Hofmeister governorship?
Yeah, Joy and Jenna, if those two chicks win, they are willing to sell out biology so they can wield power and authority. These two chicks were going to put boys in my daughter's bathroom. Mm-hmm. This is not okay, and it's hard to figure they've got a constituency, and I can't imagine how anyone thinks that's okay. And I think the vast majority of us think it's not okay. I think we are the vast majority, but I think we've been apathetic as a populace and as a state, and our churches have been overrun by weak pastors, and they've used the supposed separation of church and state as a crutch to not engage in politics, and they know they have to, but they have said they can't, and that's total baloney. And they're selling our state down the river to the two chicks who are going to put boys in my daughter's bathroom, whether it's head in the sand or whether they're actively engaged in pushing this anti-God woke religion. It's like, it's one and the same at some point. And I just got to figure that men, in particular pastors and congregations and fathers, are going to stand up.
Well, and and just to get to that point, I'm getting this Fathers Defending Daughters off the ground. I know I've talked to Riley about that, and I think fathers need to be involved more in this conversation because I think nobody protects their daughters, nobody protects their kids like their dads. And you have all the Mamas for Liberty is an amazing group. I just want to point that out. I'm not attempting to usurp them at all. I'm just trying to get dads out there like Riley to stand up as well, because the left has a vested interest in removing fathers from the conversation, whether you want to call it misogyny. They call, anytime a man speaks to these issues, it's they're misogynists, or they're, mansplaining you, or all of these things. And they do this to knock out dads, specifically from these kinds of conversations. And I think that's an issue that I think Governor Stitt needs to recognize as well, that he can't go into this debate and play a half measure. Would you agree? He can't go into this debate with Joy Hofmeister, who's going to come full-fledged for the leftist agenda, try to do it sounding very moderate, right? But he's going to come full, and he has to be as full-fledged against it as a father, not just as the guy running for governor, right? But he's got kids, right? And I think if he would take that tack in this debate, I've seen Ryan Walters do this to some effect, talking about his kids and his family. I've seen Jake talk, I've seen Riley talk about it, I've seen Ron, I've seen lots of men stand up and say, no, not my kids, no. And I think if he would come out and say, as a father, this is why I'm not going to let this happen. He could eliminate some of the leftist attacks that come against him on those lines. Wouldn't you think, Senator?
Yeah, that's I believe the downfall of the majority of politicians in Oklahoma is this attempt to appeal to both sides. And as we see the left trend more and more left till they run off the hill, and they're in a free fall right now, and their wokeness, there is no middle ground anymore. And you have to simply stand for truth and to be bold about it. I mean, Riley mentioned DeSantis earlier. We're seeing him do this, whether it be Disney or the school systems. He's standing up, not in Florida. And we need that same kind of boldness here in Oklahoma, that same kind of leadership. And the people would rally around our governor if he did that. I believe that there are many people who may sit at home and not go out to vote because they're wondering, do I want a moderate or do I want a liberal? I don't know if it's the other. But if you come out strong as a strong conservative, man, you're going to have people coming out of the woodwork saying, I wasn't going to vote, but he just inspired me.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that. Riley, would you agree?
Yeah, the truth has a funny way of drawing people in, because we're so starved for a man to stand up and lead and tell the truth. And when you do that, man, and I think you do it not to win votes. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And I think, there's no other way to say it. I think he's got a big opportunity that, and Trump has showed us, DeSantis has showed us the way. You don't say things in a cute way so as to avoid the leftist hammer or the fake news hammer. They're coming either way, and their attacks, they don't mean jack. They're not real. These people they're not even in reality. They call you a name, you say, so what, and move on. They're idiots. And you just have to say what's real. And I think people are starving for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are. And there's a lot of pushback on establishment Republicans and leadership, like in the legislature, to say, well, if we don't go along with, and look like we are empathetic, right? Well, you shouldn't be empathetic to things like your kids being mutilated. You shouldn't be empathetic to things like boys and girls bathrooms. You can't tolerate the intolerable, right? And I think that Governor Stitt has been scared by a little polling, that may show. But I'll tell you this, the polls in this state are just way out of whack, man. They are way out of whack. And I don't trust a whole lot of them at all. Just give me your thoughts on the polls and what you've seen here, Senator, while I get this set up.
Yeah, I don't trust polls either. I never took a poll in my election, in my campaigns. So, I mean, I have yet to see one that was anywhere near close to in result. And so, at least in a major election, some of the smaller elections may be easier to predict, but in some of these bigger ones, they're so influenced by media and other sources that I think that I personally don't trust them. So I think Stitt is going to come out and win this thing, and probably in a greater margin than any of us expect. I really do. I think that he will come out of this with a big win. But at the same time, you do have that question mark. You never want to, encourage the people to be lax and to stay at home. So it is going to require all of us getting out there and showing up at the poll. And we need him in office. We just need him to follow through.
That's right. Riley?
Yeah, I'm a ditto head. I'm a Rush baby. And he said it over and over again. Polls aren't meant to reflect the race. They're meant to influence the race. And that's never been more clear. I mean, the reddest state in the union, and we got Joy's been up and Jenna's been up. I don't buy that for a second. Not for 1 second. Never did.
Well, I'm trying to get this debate up here. Hold on. They're making it difficult. Here we go.
If anything, this should show us that she even has a chance. It should wake us up to where our school system is, because numbers are entirely connected to the schools, the public school system. And if they're out in droves in supporting Joy and supporting Jenna, that just shows you where the school systems in general are at.
Yep.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, well, here we go. We're going to jump in here and start watching the debate, and we're going to offer commentary as we go.
Boy, she's short, isn't she? Can't they get her a stool or something?
They're on it.
Why are they up there with them? That's kind of strange.
Yeah, those goofballs. I'm not sure what I think about them. That's the non-doc guys?
Yeah.
I can't.
Independent journalism. Interesting. Well, and see, this goes into the issue of what you call independent journalism. It's hard to call people with corporate sponsorship independent.
I think, yeah, definitionally there's a problem there.
Yeah. I saw that really early on in my campaign, and I let them all know I won't be doing interviews with you because it's my time.
Can you hear him, Mark?
Yeah, I can hear him. Can you?
No, we can't.
And all those in the audience.
There we go.
There you go.
You know,
Sorry.
I'd like to remind people.
He just
how far
started.
We've come in the last 4 years. We've gone from budget deficits to a record savings account, from 4-day school weeks and teacher walkouts to now the largest investment in education and teachers in the history of our state. A brightest economy with the lowest unemployment we've ever had. Folks, Oklahoma's turnaround, it is working. We simply can't go backwards, and we know what will happen if we put Biden's party back in charge. I think about Americans who are struggling with high inflation, The Biden party, they want tax hikes. Meanwhile, in Oklahoma, I cut taxes for every single Oklahoman, every single business, and I want to eliminate the grocery tax. You know, when I think about people just struggling to keep the lights on, Biden's administration, they're begging OPEC and Russia to produce more oil. Meanwhile, in Oklahoma, we're protecting oil and gas jobs to have most of the affordable energy in the entire country. And when people just want safe communities and families, you know, the Biden party is defunding the police. Meanwhile, in Oklahoma, we back the blue. I gave our law enforcement a 30% increase this year, the largest they had ever had in the last decade. Folks, Oklahoma's turnaround is working. We cannot go backwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Superintendent Hofmeister, 90-second opening statement to you.
Well, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be with you, and I am grateful for Governor Stitt coming for this debate, and all of those who have joined us today. This is important to have public debate. Thank you for hosting. My husband Jerry and I, we've been married almost 38 years. We have 4 grown children, and just 9 months ago, welcomed our first grandbaby. And as we raised our kids, we raised them with the same values that most Oklahomans hold dear. We value faith, family, education, hard work. And we know that it takes working together in order to see our economy thrive. We know it means that we've got to have a community where we put world-class schools at the top, where we have access to quality, affordable health care and safe communities, and where we are also prioritizing the infrastructure for great jobs in this state. I'm the daughter of an electrician, and my grandfather was an electrician. And it was that hard work that my dad did that inspired me to put education first. I was also that kid who struggled to read. I went to college, the first in my family. I stepped out of college, got married, put my husband through Baptist seminary, and we worked together to overcome a lot of challenges. But we know that for Oklahoma to flourish, we've got to get back to common sense, respect for one another, working together, and getting things
Code
done.
speak.
Thank you very much. Let's get to our first round of questions.
Respect for one another. And she just took a dig at him for showing up.
Question. Trust me, it goes better that way. Our first round of questions tonight is titled A Relaxing Run for Governor. Each question will offer 1 minute to each candidate to answer. We will mostly alternate who answers each question first. Storm, you've got a toss-up.
Yeah, this first question is going to be a toss-up. I'm sure it's going to be
Why are they up
difficult
there with
question
them?
of the evening. When Governor Brad Henry was in office, he honed his skills as a painter. When she was governor, Mary Fallon would ride her motorcycle around the mansion grounds. This is a stressful job you're both seeking. So tell us what hobby or activity helps you relax. 30 seconds.
See, and I just can't stand these kinds of questions. It's like,
Well, as a father
You're just
of 6,
biding time.
You know, most of my time is spent with chasing kids
Nobody cares
around
about
at
your
different
hobbies.
sporting events, and my 6th graders playing football. So go Huskies for all them watching out there. I've got a 9th grader that plays volleyball, and so really just like most dads right now, juggling your job and then also being a good parent and following your kids around. I love doing that, and then trying to work in a date night with my wife is important. Thanks for being here, Sarah. It's usually dragging her to a campaign barbecue this time of the year, but it's a lot of fun being a dad and a parent and really serving Oklahoma.
Thank you. Superintendent?
Oh, that's an easy one. I love to spend time with our new grandbaby, Willa. And actually, you know, she's part of the motivation
That's great.
That keeps fueling me. And every time we think about what we are going to do for the future of this state, we think about our kids. And my husband and I have enjoyed hikes all over the state and state parks.
see, and I'll talk
as
over
well
this while
as,
she's not really saying anything because it's
actually,
these kind of nothing questions eat into the hour
many miles
and
all
limit the
over
amount of
state
questions you
parks
can really
and
ask.
Oklahomans,
And you'll see that in the questions they don't
Oklahoma.
ask throughout this.
Yeah. Willa, I wonder if
Wonderful.
Willa
Governor, I've got
is
the
a
first
boy
question
or
for
a girl.
you. You campaigned for office in 2018 on making Oklahoma a top 10 state. I think everybody's heard that. But 4 years later, we remain ranked around the bottom 10 on states on key
See?
education and healthcare issues. As you make your case for re-election, tell us specifically, where have you moved the needle the most on making Oklahoma top 10, and where have you been unable to move that needle?
Well,
Oh, he
thank you.
could
You know,
hammer her
as,
here.
as a leader and governor, and whether you're CEO, you have to set a vision for all of your employees and for all the state. So being top 10 is an aspirational goal. It's something that we're never going to hit, but it directs us in that we live in the greatest state in the country. The American dream is alive and well in Oklahoma. For a kid that went to first grade in Wayne, Oklahoma,
We're never gonna hit
graduated
it.
from Norman High School,
Don't-
you can accomplish
That's what
anything
he
you set
says.
your mind to. So that vision is what I focus on. But we're number one in most affordable electricity. We're number 5 in bridge conditions. We were number 50th, the last place when I took over, in incarceration rates. That's something I'm very proud of. I've moved the needle, closed 2 private prisons, saving the taxpayer dollars, but also giving people second chances. But you know, you bring up a really good question.
So you closed
Education is something
private
that
business?
everybody, that's what we want for our kids. Everybody out there wants that. What my opponent needs to answer is, why are we 49th in education right now?
Yeah, get
Well,
it.
I've got that question right here. You've got that woe sign. Take a look at that. Superintendent Hofmeister, you
What?
led into it. I mentioned education rankings not being where
shut
anyone
them
wants
off.
them to be. You've been state superintendent for 8 years. Where specifically have you moved the needle most, and where have you been unable to move that needle?
Oh, I appreciate this question, and you're right. Oklahoma is woefully prepared for the future in education because we do not have the people on the team to meet the needs of students.
Your team?
Oklahoma has a teacher shortage that leads the nation.
We need to talk about that.
When I first stepped into office, I asked for competitive pay to attract teachers, and we got that after 3 years. But what we realized, too, is that there needs to be more people on the team, school counselors, reading specialists, art professionals. We are losing those people to other states and other industries. And we
Thank
did
God.
raise our academic expectations, our standards, and now they moved from a D- to an A rating. But you can have the highest standards in the world, and if you don't have the teachers to teach them, what good is it? Here's the problem. This governor has a school voucher scheme that is a rural school killer. You kill the school, you
not
kill the
true.
community.
Governor, 15-second rebuttal. We're going to get to all that.
15 seconds?
Anything right now?
Well, you know, the
15
fact-
seconds.
here's
What could
the
you
facts.
say in 15 seconds?
You know, the facts are this, my opponent has received $1 billion in new spending over the last 8 years. The only thing that hasn't improved is education. So really, the people out there, Superintendent, want to know, you know, why has your record gone downhill in education outcomes since you've been superintendent?
Final 15 seconds. to close us out.
Because we need a governor who gets it. We need a governor who understands the connection
That's the bug.
between people,
Yeah.
teachers who are trained, resourced, and ready on day one to meet the needs of children who have very incredibly deep needs
Yeah.
today. And we'll talk
What are
more
you
about
talking
what
about?
those are and how to solve it.
Absolutely, we will.
So it's not my fault, it's your
All right, the
fault.
60 seconds starts with Superintendent Hofmeister. Let's go back in time 18 months. You're both statewide elected Republican officials serving together on executive.
Uh-oh. Did it go down?
Cancer.
Oh, we got an ad. So while they're taking that,
Point where
this is
I'm going to fight.
the questions being asked here are pointed at the governor, number one, and they are lopsided towards her. I mean, we just see that already. So
Of course.
hold on, coming back here.
And as I view this state, we realize that we are not seeing a governor whose vision includes building the robust world-class schools that are needed. We don't have a governor who has put the access to health care for all patients in this state in.
Anytime I hear the word robust, I think baloney. What
Yeah,
they're saying is baloney.
yeah, it's fairly interesting. Is this going down for anybody else? Jeez.
You know, she made mention of the incredible deep needs of kids, you know, setting it up to talk about
Cancer isn't something you
SEL.
prepare.
Right. Yes, that's where she was going.
These woke counselors.
And you wish Stitt would hammer back with like, look, these kids are it needs to be the family that raises these kids. Like fathers need to be in the home.
As an Oklahoman, and I'm on one team, and that's Team Oklahoma. I stand here today representing Oklahoma families regardless of their party affiliation. And I will also say that I was a Republican longer than Governor Stitt was registered to vote.
Governor Stitt, 60
Then why are you a Democrat now?
That
Yeah,
Mrs.
she's
Hofmeister
old.
was displeased with your job and going to participate in this race.
Yeah, those people that are sitting at their table right now and we're getting into these things, here's the facts. We have the largest savings account in our state's history. I cut taxes for every single Oklahoman. We want to eliminate the grocery tax. We've been holding government accountable. We even small government, lower taxes. My opponent, she couldn't see a path forward for herself as a Republican, so she switched parties. She joined Biden's party, which canceled the Keystone Pipeline day one in office. They believe in open borders. She's never saw a tax they didn't like and want to spend your taxpayer dollars. So folks, the turnaround is working. We have an awesome state. We are so much better off 4 years today than we were 4 years ago. We want to keep this momentum going.
Thank you very much.
And if,
Let's
and
give
if we
a
can
round of
replace
applause
her
to
with
these
Ryan
candidates so
Walters,
far.
Right.
then we can get to
Have some synergy. Yeah, that's, I think, the issue.
Know me means that you know that we must be having a little bit of a technical issue with the video feed. I'm going to take a drink of water. Storm, you want to take a drink of water as well? This is a good time for you to share that stream again as we
See that's the issue here because there was a problem with the feed during the hardest question she's going to get all night, which is why did you switch parties? Just want to point that out.
Into it. I hope we've gotten that worked out. They will let me
I'm not
know
saying
if
it has to be on purpose, but it's pretty well timed, don't you think?
So this 60-second question will start with Governor
patterns
Stitt.
emerge.
You spent a great deal of time trying to recruit major companies to move to Oklahoma, but one of the challenges facing our state and the entire country involves the workforce. Many industries are struggling to find qualified job applicants and companies and often speak of a skills gap in the hiring market. Simply put, what must be done to improve the situation for Oklahoma students and employers alike?
Thank you. We have to break down the silos between higher ed, common ed, and career tech. We need one workforce person that can get everyone aligned. And to me, it's pretty simple. Let's look at the jobs of tomorrow. What are the companies? What do they need? And then let's make sure we get that workforce ready. We need more engineers. We need more doctors and lawyers. But we also need more A&P mechanics and HVAC techs and more nurses. And so I'm constantly working with higher ed to focus on that workforce of tomorrow. One exciting thing that's happening in Norman, Oklahoma is we just set up an aviation program. We are thinking outside the box, folks. So a high school student, if they want to become an A&P mechanic, and by the way, just for all the young people working out there, American Airlines is hiring. It's $70,000 a year for a starting salary. So you can go to this high school. By the time you graduate, you're 90% there to an A&P mechanic. We have to think outside the box, and we can't keep doing the same things we've done for the last 8 years.
They talk like parents and kids really can't do anything without them.
Well, this is the reason I'm running, because we absolutely are missing out on opportunities for industry leaders to come to Oklahoma, but also to keep people here. We've got to build a long-term plan, which is going to actually build capacity for our state. What the governor has done is focused on short-term gains. A Panasonic deal, $700 million. A lot of enthusiasm around that. I'm not against an incentive that makes sense with a high return on investment. But if we're going to look long-term, we have got to support our kids. They've got to have a competitive education. We can't dismantle public education, which is going to happen under the governor's watch. And we've got to make sure that Oklahoma.
She's going to kill him on school choice. That's the whole thing I've said the whole time.
Nothing to prevent the health decisions that should be made between.
If it wasn't that, it'd been on something else. They just lied.
Yeah.
Finally, I want to say, we need a governor who can close a deal. All right? We need a governor who gets the connection with education and that will put Oklahomans first. The only business that is thriving under Governor Stitt's watch is his own.
15 seconds.
Here's the deal. I
He needs
know
to come
the
back
truth.
strong.
She's not lying to me. She's lying to you, the public. We have the lowest unemployment in our state's history. We have an economy that is growing. Right now, Oklahoma is number 11 in the country, 11th in migration, people moving to the great state of Oklahoma because of our pro-business, pro-freedom policies. We don't want to put Biden's party back in control of Oklahoma, of higher taxes and more regulation.
Superintendent, 30 seconds if
That's
you'd like
good.
it.
Yeah, the governor keeps talking about people out of the state. This is the practice. He reads off a national script and is out of touch with Oklahomans and the actual needs and solutions that are right here if we will work with stakeholders and those experts.
Stakeholders.
Here in Oklahoma.
That is it.
Stakeholder capitalism.
I
yeah.
also know that
Communism.
he's taking credit for the largest savings account, yet he didn't sign the budget. He said he held a press conference and said because he didn't have anything to do with that. So it's a convenient today, 20 days before election, to talk about that.
All right, 15 more seconds.
I'm not really sure what her point was.
Again, to everybody out
She had
there
nothing
at your
else.
kitchen table, we've gone from budget nightmares, almost zero money in savings, and you elected a business person. You wanted an outsider, not a career politician, to put a fresh set of eyes on every contract and hold government accountable. That's exactly what I'm doing for you. We've got the largest savings account in state history, the lowest unemployment. We cut taxes last year, and we're going to continue that momentum.
15 seconds, Superintendent, if you want it.
Well, yeah. First of all, I would just say that the governor talks about that we have low unemployment, but I want to tell you about conversations I've had with people. A woman in Tulsa, 4 kids, she's working 3 jobs. And
15
she said
seconds
home
is
ownership
up.
is going to be out of reach
15
for her.
seconds.
She can't imagine how she will ever afford it. It matters about the quality of jobs we have. And in order to be ready for that, we've got to have
living
the
wages?
education and the
You want
health.
to talk about
to do
living
it.
wages?
Thank you very much. I thought this was going to be a round called a relaxing run for governor, but who knows? Let's see if we get there on this question. A lot of people thought they would be voting on State Question 820 this year, which proposes decriminalizing marijuana in Oklahoma. Delays in
Senator, I want your thoughts on this when we get through it.
validation process. Some people would be mad at me if I said delays, but delays in getting this validated means it won't be on the November 8th ballot, but yesterday Governor Stitt set a March 7th special election for the question. So we're curious, Superintendent Hofmeister, 60 seconds to you. Will you support or oppose SQ 820 if you are elected governor? And let's go ahead and ask, have you ever smoked marijuana or consumed cannabis?
The answer to your last question is no. However,
Oh, we're going to get a Bill Clinton here.
Well, if-
Oh, come on. And this is on their end, by the way. They just said that. This isn't on my end. This is on their end from what they say. But it's interesting. Anytime that she gets asked a question that could go the wrong way for her, we lose the feed. I don't get it. Because that was her Bill Clinton moment right there.
Well,
And of
what was
course,
happening-
going to get another ad.
Prepare for it.
What happened at Matt Walsh's speech at Houston? You know, they disrupted the feed
Yeah.
on his
Yeah.
tour, so that kind of stuff is happening.
Oh yeah.
Come on. You can do it. Well, let's talk for a minute. What is this? Because apparently the feed is not working. So just talk to us while I get this moving. Senator Merrick, what do you feel about this marijuana question in general? Oh, sorry, I muted you. My bad.
It's been an issue. Obviously, it's been it was introduced into the state the wrong way too cavalier with no regulation. So then there was several years of catch up, and unfortunately, a lot of businesses suffered because of it. And we invited the foreign nationals to just come walk right in and buy up all of our land, and so it invited so many problems. Thankfully, we got some regulation in place. Unfortunately, we essentially have recreational marijuana in the state because pretty much anybody can get a license. And so I'd like to see.
Okay, we're back. Hold on. Sorry. Thank you,
that
Senator.
answer, I do think that it is something that we basically have recreational marijuana today, but we don't have the tax income. So that's very attractive to have the ability to actually have
To
some
take more of
revenue
my
that will
money?
help education and
Oh,
some
good.
other needed areas.
Thanks, Joy.
But what I'm most worried about is cleaning up the mess that's been left under Governor Stitt's watch. In fact, not only under his watch, but under his nose. His own appointee is helping Chinese businesses smuggle drugs right here in the state. We know
What?
that this is a serious crisis. Go talk with anyone in rural Oklahoma. In fact, I was talking with Western farmers and ranchers
You
about
don't
this
even know
very
who you're
issue.
talking to.
Let me let him get his answer in. Thank you very much. Governor, let me remind you of the question. If you're reelected in November, will you support or oppose SQ 820 in March? And have you ever consumed cannabis?
Are we talking about medical or recreational?
Either way, whatever form you would like to have it in.
To the people out there that are actually watching at home and concerned about this issue, it is a real mess. When I first became governor, it was a poorly worded referendum, and this industry popped up overnight, medical marijuana industry. So we passed 12 different laws last year to address it. We spun the agency out. We hired 80 new enforcement agents. We have a moratorium. So I heard from rural Oklahoma with all the foreign nationals buying up farmland and ranch land. We put a moratorium. There's no more new licenses till we get control of this industry. We also are one of only 14 states that we passed. It's illegal for a foreign national to own farmland in Oklahoma. So we're doing drug busts. We are enforcing that. We're going to get control of that industry before we ever talk about the recreational piece.
Well, let me just ask you, though, so are you saying that if you don't get that under control, you won't support it or you will support it?
Yeah.
What is your position in March?
I will be very clear. No, I am not supporting that. It is still illegal federally. We should not have a checkered board of jurisdictions across the state, so I am not supporting recreational marijuana. I'm not sure, again, what my opponent is saying. She's been spinning this in a circle like a politician, but I think Oklahomans want to know what her answer is on this issue.
Well, let me ask you real quick. Have you, with the medical question, have you consumed it? Ever? Once? Nobody's mad.
My parents are in the room, so they're going to be very disappointed. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you told the
Storm,
truth.
you've got a
Attaboy.
question about turnpikes, I believe. We're a little bit behind, but this is a great conversation. Storm, you're up.
Okay.
Well, at least he was honest. Yeah.
Question.
That's good.
By the
This
way,
will be-
I would want to
Yes.
just say.
Oh,
I do
yeah,
think
just let her
that
interrupt.
People should have the opportunity to have their voices heard, and I will respect the will of the people, but we will do this in a way that is safe and that gets control again over the kind of Wild West that we're in today.
Righty.
Storm.
Governor Stitt, earlier this year, you announced a massive expansion of turnpikes in Oklahoma aimed at reducing traffic congestion. The plan is expected to cost about $5 billion over 15 years, and it's aggravated some citizens who will be displaced from their homes or have a loud turnpike in their proverbial backyard. What do you say to those Oklahomans whose lives are being upended for new toll roads?
Well, we want to be top 10 at everything we do, and that includes roads and bridges. And staying ahead of infrastructure and congestion is a huge advantage for Oklahoma right now. We've gone from 47th in bridge conditions with our hardworking folks in that sector, and now we're number 5. Everybody remembers in here in 2002 when we had the bridge collapse happen. 14 people lost their lives. Infrastructure is so important. We're focused on rural infrastructure. We want rural roads. I went to Washington, D.C. to make sure we got some funding for our rural highways, to put shoulders on all of our rural highways. So I'm an infrastructure governor, there's no doubt about it. But we're going to accommodate every single person that we can as they're laying out routes, and there's engineering. So there's in comment periods right now. But we can't have gridlock. And what you're going to hear my opponent say is she wants to cancel it. And apparently she wants gridlock on I-35 for the next 50 years. But leaders have to lead, and we have an obligation to make sure that Oklahoma is well positioned for the growth and the momentum that we have going for all of our citizens.
Superintendent Hofmeister, are you in favor of this turnpike expansion?
Decent
I
answer.
am not in favor of the southern extension that was not part of what was established with the authority through the legislature. This is something that I have sat in the living rooms of those in Norman who are in the path of this. Over 600 homes. They are needing answers. So I think part of what we have to do is reform.
This
We need
is a rough
eminent
patch for
domain
him.
reform. We need to have the Open Meetings Act to apply to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, and I am calling for the state auditor to do the first ever external state audit of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. 75 years that hasn't happened, and it needs to. Also, the 2-lane roads all across this state are where the deaths occur. These are killers. And instead of working to support safer roads all across this state, this governor has been dug in, and the way that the communities found out was when it broke on social media. We have a lot of work to do. We need a modern
Roads are
infrastructure
killers,
for the future,
like
and we don't
guns
have it
are
today.
killers, or what?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We, something's ringing. Well, that's the end of round 1 of questions. Give them a round of applause.
I think you did okay.
Yeah, there's all these questions are slanted.
Second round
That's
of
just
Of course,
questions tonight is
yeah, they're
entitled
angled
The
at the
Kitchen
issues
Sink, because
that
we're going to throw a lot of
supposedly
things
he's
at them.
been
We're going to
having
have a
problems
slew
with.
of questions on prominent issues in civic discourse. Buckle up, Storm.
This is a 60-second question. Superintendent Hofmeister first. Extreme drought and other weather events are becoming more common, are being blamed on climate change, which societies across the globe have recognized as a scientific consensus.
Oh,
Many
get
people
outta
acknowledge
here
how
with
human
that.
activity that releases carbon dioxide and other greenhouse
up.
gases.
okay. This is going to be an interesting.
The question, do you agree with
Yeah.
that statement, and do you agree with the Oklahoma
Tell 'em the
Democratic Party
truth.
platform, which supports dramatic and bold actions be taken on a worldwide basis to reduce
Call 'em crazy.
carbon emissions?
Hold on.
60 seconds.
There's nothing that defines the quality of life more than energy. We need more energy, not less. And frankly, there is no such thing as good energy or bad energy, clean energy or not. We have zero emissions that people talk about, which we know is not true. There are zero emission cars, they claim, but they have emissions when they're built, when they're transported, when they're shipped. There's nothing clean about not having energy 24/7. Ask a hospital last year. Ask a homeowner last year during that winter storm or polar vortex when our grid did not, barely made it, and we saw an increased need to use
Was she in
gas
Texas?
because our homes were without electricity, and we did not have the ability to power this state with the right fuel during that storm. We need, and I'm critical, frankly, of this governor. I'm critical of Joe Biden. They haven't done enough to battle the needs of Oklahoma and the energy industry, and I will never turn my back on Oklahoma's energy industry, and I am not in favor of raising any taxes. In fact, I've called for a reduction of the fuel tax, and this governor didn't.
Governor Stitt, 60 seconds. Do you agree with the statement that human activity is causing climate change, and how do you balance?
She didn't answer that
so
question, by the
reliant
way.
on Petroleum
That's
for
right.
jobs and economic activity.
You know, first off, climate is always changing. What I'll brag about Oklahoma is we've reduced our emissions 3 times the national average since 2005 from President Biden's own benchmark. It is clean burning natural gas that is leading to that. So the attack from the Biden administration, her party, on Oklahoma oil and gas is just unbelievable. Every single president of the United States since 1973 has had an energy independence policy. She joined this party. And day one in office, the same year she joined, they killed the Keystone Pipeline. That's what's causing inflation numbers to go up. That's why we're paying so much money at the gas pump. Oklahoma has an all of the above, more of everything approach. We're number 2 in wind energy. I've signed an MOU with the governor of Arkansas and Louisiana to get a hydrogen hub right here in Oklahoma. So folks, our energy grid, we're a net exporter, and we're one of only 4 states that can say this. One of only 4 states can say that over 40% of our energy comes from renewables. So I'm so proud of the Oklahoma story. I tell it all the time. You should be very proud of it. And it's leading to huge economic events here with manufacturing want to move here because of our reliable energy grid, something we're really proud of in Oklahoma.
Superintendent Hofmeister will give you 15 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. American energy independence is American safety and security. Evidently, he reads off national scripts. I don't. I'm an independent thinker. I don't care what someone else has written or stands for. I am standing for the people of this state. I'm on one team, Team Oklahoma, and the energy sector is an incredibly important part of our economy, jobs, and the people of this state need those jobs. This governor has, on his watch, We still have hundreds of wells that are offline. We can do more. He does not have a comprehensive energy plan, and we should have it, and we will. We only have, with this governor, 70 pages of pictures about
Thank you.
fracking.
Governor, 15 more seconds on energy before we move on.
Well, I guess she wants government intervention and everything. I think our oil and gas companies do a fantastic job. We're number 4 in the country in oil production, number 3 in natural gas production. So I'm actually not sure exactly what she just said, but I support our oil and gas industry. We've got a thriving industry, and as well as our renewables. We can talk about both. And we're not having honest conversations, whether you're Republicans or Democrats, if you're not talking about the need for oil and natural gas and also the move to renewables. I'm going after battery companies,
Yeah.
and we're going after electric vehicle companies. We have
She's
more
beating him up
charging
because he's
stations per
accepted the
capita in
premise.
Oklahoma than
That's
any other
right.
state.
He's accepted the
Oklahoma,
environmental
E.
premise.
We have a
took the
fantastic
E.
state. The momentum is building. We got to keep it going.
Thank you very much. I'm going to point you both to that octagonal woe sign and just kind of try to keep that in mind. Finish your thought when you see it from the young man up front. Governor Stitt, we're switching to another topic. Nearly 1 year ago, hours before a man named Julius Jones was scheduled to die from lethal injection, you commuted his
they're trying to
sentence
get
to life without the possibility of parole. Jones was convicted of murdering Edmond resident Paul Howell during a 1999 carjacking. A documentary questioned Jones's guilt, but prosecutors insist he was rightfully convicted. Your official statement made about your
Yes,
decision
Jake is from
was that,
Oklahoma,
quote,
Matt.
after prayerful consideration and reviewing materials presented by all sides of this case, you commuted the sentence. Tonight, can you be more specific about why you commuted that sentence? Do you believe Julius Jones was wrongly convicted?
You know, when you take the oath of office as governor, you promise to obey, we promise to defend, we promise to enforce all the laws in the state of Oklahoma. And the death penalty is probably the most surreal thing that you can do as a governor. So we have a process that we put in place. I spoke with all the previous governors about their process. We met with the defense attorneys, we met with the prosecutors, I met with the Howell family, and I felt like after hearing all that information, that was the best decision for the state of Oklahoma.
Do you think he was wrongfully convicted? Why did you think that was the best decision?
Well, I'm not going to get into, I'm not the jury, I didn't see all the evidence, but that was the best decision for the state of Oklahoma.
Superintendent, I question whether I want to push back or ask you a third time, but
You'll
I
get
know
the
what
same
I think.
answer.
I'll get the same answer. I know what I think you told the Howell family. Are you willing to say that here?
See, they're going.
Tell it.
It was
going
not my
after him.
story to tell. I didn't have their permission to do so. Okay, Superintendent Hofmeister.
See,
Beyond Julius Jones, Governor Stitt has denied commutations to a half dozen other death row.
We're going to break in here in a minute because I'm going to
The parole
get
board has recommended leniency. Tomorrow
the senator's thoughts on some things that we've already passed through, which I think is the meat of the debate.
Is
But
scheduled to be executed
this
for
is-
killing a 9-month-old baby. The Oklahoma Democratic Party's official platform calls for, quote, an end to the death penalty. Many of your supporters hope that you will discontinue the practice of execution in Oklahoma. If you are elected governor, will executions continue?
This is a settled matter in Oklahoma. The voters made it very clear when they voted for the death penalty, and it is part of our Constitution, and I will uphold that. But it is important that we have a governor who actually does the due diligence with that office, with those pardon and parole recommendations, not seeking national headlines like we saw on one day.
She's got him
when
there.
The governor didn't do his homework and who allowed a violent criminal, in fact, to leave. And that criminal, along with, I don't know if he was too busy sowing division, but from protecting families, but tell that to the family of Andrea Blankenship, who was murdered by a man that this governor let out on a record day of letting out many nonviolent offenders, and he did not do his homework. And Governor Stitt let this man out, and he killed 2 other people as well. Or ask the Michelle Powers family, who this governor signed to release the crossbow killer of Tulsa, my hometown. And it wasn't until the media found out that was reversed. We need a governor who does his homework.
Governor Stitt, 30 seconds rebuttal.
Yeah, again, to the people out there, and what she just said is simply not true. When we have released their low-level drug offenders, I signed the largest commutation in U.S. history back in 2019. Right now, we are leading the country in the lowest recidivism rate. That means people going back into prison. I'm very proud of the record that we've made make sense. We've been locking up people that we're mad at, and now we need to do it with the people that we're afraid of. And so we're giving second chances to some folks, but for her to twist this like this, it's just really, really disgusting and bringing up something that horribly happened. There's people that get out of prison every single day, and we can't control when something bad's going to happen. And for you to use that as political gains, that's super disappointing. And I know the people out there think that's a cheap shot.
Well, let me say this real quick. We're talking about Lawrence Anderson, who was redocketed in error by the Pardon and Parole Board. This matter was investigated by the Oklahoma County Grand Jury. They alleged that there was improper influence. I don't know about that matter. What is your understanding of why Lawrence Anderson got redocketed and then got commuted?
There's thousands and thousands of people that are currently in prison, and they're going to be getting out this year that have got certain sentences. And the Pardon and Parole Board goes through those the best they can. There's 5 people on that board, and they recommend for some people to get released. And sometimes bad things happen, and with thousands of people every year, the other thing is just throwing away the key and locking every single person up for good. That's not the solution either, Superintendent. And so things are going to happen, and for you to take that type of shot and bring those wounds back up and try to make those families out there think that was somehow I was responsible, or the 5 people on the Pardon and Parole Board, they absolutely would change their vote and make a different decision if we knew that person was going to kill someone. Everybody out there knows that. We all know that you're just trying to make political points. That's disgusting.
Get her.
30 seconds, Superintendent.
Yes. So,
Real quick, let's keep the pause down. Thank you.
so let's talk about the facts. The fact is, the rates of violent crime are higher in Oklahoma
not
under
true.
your watch than in
not
New
true.
York and California. That's a fact.
Zero.
We'll have that fact checked by the Frontier Superintendent.
It's also a fact that
Hang
medical
on,
marijuana.
Oklahomans, do you believe we have higher crime than New York or California? That's what you just said.
Safe education
Oh!
is my top
Okay.
priority, and it will be as governor.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question.
Especially if you can lie about it at the outset.
Also.
Yes, thanks to legislation you signed as governor, abortion is now categorically illegal in Oklahoma, except when a woman's life is in jeopardy. If a woman or
not
underage
true.
girl is raped or is struggling with severe chemical addiction, she is criminally prohibited from terminating a pregnancy in Oklahoma. If
Amen.
one were to be passed by the legislature, would you sign a law allowing abortion in cases of rape, incest, or when a woman is entering rehab for a chemical
Hammer it.
addiction?
Say
60
no.
seconds.
As a father of 3 daughters, just unimaginable pain, and I can't imagine if something like that would have happened. We believe that life begins exception in Oklahoma. There are exceptions in our law that we're going to leave up to the healthcare professions. But I think we want to be number one in caring for the mother and the child in Oklahoma. We want to be number one in adoption rates. But I think the most extreme view here is my opponents and her party. And she won't actually answer it. But there's states like Colorado and California and New York that will abort babies all the way up until the time of birth. They're more aligned with North Korea and China. Even France bans abortion at 14 weeks. You won't hear her giving an answer. I'm very clear on my pro-life stance in Oklahoma, and I would like to know, is she going to side with the Biden party and allow abortions all the way up until the time of birth?
We are going to hear from Superintendent Hofmeister, but speaking of being very clear, would you sign an exception for rape, incest, or addiction?
No.
If the legislature
no.
put that on my desk, I would sign that.
Okay. Superintendent Hofmeister, 60 seconds. And also, when it comes to abortion, how would you work with the Republican legislature on that?
The women of Oklahoma have heard you loud and clear, all right? And let me tell you that we have a governor who has shown no mercy for victims of rape or incest. He has signed and invited the most extreme ban on abortion in this country.
Hallelujah.
I am personally pro-life, but I haven't walked in every woman's shoes. I don't favor extremes on either side of this issue. This is a healthcare decision between a woman and her doctor and her faith. We need to repeal what the governor has done. He has criminalized healthcare. He has criminalized standard medical care. He has
The
assaulted
legislature
women
did
and
that,
doctors. And when
Sunshine.
he was confronted by a rape victim who said, "Governor, what would you do to help me?" He had no answer. He had no help. I will.
I am going to let the governor. We're going to let Governor Stitt respond to that, but Superintendent Hofmeister, you mentioned
Clapping is
repealing
good
the
now?
abortion laws. Those passed with overwhelming support in the legislature. How do you do that? Are you willing to veto the budget? What leverage do you have on abortion? Superintendent,
Because
yes.
of the clapping, I'm sorry, did you direct that at
Yes,
me? Yes.
you
So-
mentioned, yeah.
Yes. We have a supermajority Republican House and Senate. Politics is about relationships. And I have worked with many of our Republican and Democratic-led elected leaders in the House and Senate. And there are many who have worked to advance issues that their communities want, and we do the hard work of building consensus, of bringing people together and leading. This governor fights with the legislature. Instead of saying, all right, let's come together. What are your top priorities? These are the things that are going to be a no-go. I'm going to be a
Thank you.
backstop to some of that as well, but we will work together to get things done for the people of Oklahoma.
Thank you, Superintendent. Governor, 15 more seconds on abortion if you'd like.
Again, to the people out there, I'm very clear that I believe that life begins at conception, and we don't even know where my opponent stands on it.
Even if they're raped,
Again, she
right?
stands with the most extreme of her party, and they will not say, when is it too late to take a human life? They don't know. They won't tell you.
Good point.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Okay,
excuse
10
me.
seconds.
Yeah, let her
10
answer.
I
hard
continue
seconds.
to hear a theme with Kevin Stitt. It's all about party. Do you hear it?
It's about truth.
This
what
is
it's
about people for
Answers.
me. Excuse me.
Amen.
This is about people over party. This is about Oklahomans. This is about the real issues facing Oklahoma today. I am going to fight like hell for the future of this state, and I don't
Ooh,
care. I'll
cursing.
hold both parties accountable. We're going to do what's right for Oklahomans, and that is why I'm running for office.
All right,
She's
thank
gonna
you
get
very
rich.
much. Let's take a round of applause for them so far in the race.
Okay.
We're running behind like mad, so we're going to jump into education. Norm, you have another toss-up question for the candidates.
Senator, you got to stay with me for at least 10 minutes after they're done.
With the time. Let's talk about the apparent alleged criminal mess that's become Epic Charter Schools and its founders' private management company, Epic Youth Services. This is a toss-up, so whoever wants to take it first for 90 seconds. Ben Harris and David Cheney were some of Oklahoma's most prominent political donors for years. Governor Stitt, they donated $2,700 to your 2018 campaign. Superintendent Hofmeister each donated more than $8,000 to your 2018 campaign. Now they both face embezzlement charges, and the two of you have blamed each other for the Epic saga. So without further ado, who's to blame and what went wrong with Epic? 60 seconds, whoever wants to start.
Well, when I came into office, she had already been there for 4 years. Just so everybody out there knows, she was a Republican and she was the superintendent of education 4 years before I got there. Took up to $50,000. When I first got there, I knew there was a problem. I called for an audit. Then she signed on to my audit. She could have done it before I got there. I returned, when they got indicted, I returned all of my campaign donations. I think 2,700 you said. I don't remember exactly what the number was. My opponent has still not returned over $50,000 that she received from them. She was in charge of that. We have to hold people accountable. That's what I've been doing. I've called for more audits to be more transparent with your taxpayer dollars. That's the reason we have the largest savings account we've ever had in state history. We're ranked 4th in the country in that, by the way. And we will continue to hold government accountable as long as I'm governor. I'm putting a fresh set of eyes on every single thing. And when I called for the audit of the education department that she runs, it's the largest spend in taxpayer dollars, she called it an attack. Oklahomans, I call it transparency, and so do you. So I think she needs to answer, why would she call an audit of the education department an attack? And why didn't she do an audit before I even got into office?
Superintendent, I think we had 90 seconds on Epic.
Yes, thank you. So this is a governor who stood in the way and protected his donors. That's the difference between the governor and me. I held donors accountable. And we saw this governor shield them. In fact, his own state board members were reluctant and refused to accept the audit findings of the state auditor. When she said, you must claw back a certain amount of money, it is true. Their answer was, let's audit the auditor. And we had to spend about 10, 11 more months going through every single transaction to audit the auditor. And then only at that point, well, wait, let me back up. It gets better.
She can't even spit
When
it out.
I called for probation for Epic, his board refused. They refused to hold them accountable. And it was, again, a second call after we saw change in leadership, but there still had friends and allies on that board, and they would not do it until those people were gone. Here's the bottom line. We have a governor who knows the State Department of Education needs subpoena power. They have refused it. We have seen the Epic scandal turn into putting profit over kids. We have called for change, and this governor has stood in the way and protected.
Okay, so I just want to break in here because we only have the senator for so long. And if you all want to ask the senator a question about what you've seen in the debate so far, you can super chat that in and I'll ask you a question, okay? But Senator, I want to get right to the meat of this. The first, I think the issue is abortion. What do you think of the governor's response on abortion? And it seemed to me he said that he would sign a bill that said he would allow an exception in rape and incest. And I will say this. What I'm seeing is the problem here is that if he's having any problems, it's that he's accepting too much of the leftist line on things, and she's smacking him in the head with it when he does. But I really want to know your thoughts on that.
No, I would agree. That is the place to shine for a conservative, is to come out strong. And that's exactly what I was talking about pre-show, is we need on those key points for him to come out bold and to lead. But when he concedes and says an exception for rape and incest, that undermines his whole position. I mean, for us who believe life begins at fertilization, that's across the board. There are no exceptions for that. We don't determine when life begins. That's what God decides. And so we have to stand along with truth. He mentioned standing for truth. That is the epitome of standing for truth, is when you make no exceptions for life. Yeah. And I think that he definitely lost ground there. He lost ground with me, and I think with a lot of people, when he didn't come out strong on that and say, I would accept no exceptions. I would allow for no exceptions.
Right. Well, and I think that's that's been the issue on a lot of things. We saw the same thing with the environment, right? When he's talking about clean energy, and she's smacking him over the head a little bit because first, let me say this: the questions are pointed to make her look as good as possible. You can tell that in the way that they're structured. You can tell in the way that they throw back at him when they don't throw back at her. Even when it comes down to the marijuana issue, or it comes down to the environmental issue, or the capital punishment issue, it was all pointed to make him look as bad as possible. And But what he could have done was just pointed it back at them, I think, and said, no, I'm going to be strong on this. I support what I've done. I support what I'm doing. I stand up for the Oklahoma standard on this issue, right? And I think that's what you're articulating here, Senator Merrick, is that we should strive for the Oklahoma standard on a lot of these issues when it comes to the values that Oklahoma sets for protecting kids and for punishing criminals and for supporting the oil and gas industry in the whole, and not going these half measures.
Yeah.
Right, Senator?
it's very, very frustrating because I want to fully support him. And I think he has the capacity. I think he has the ability to do that. I just see he gets right up to the line and he just won't cross it. And we're needing someone who will cross the line. Now, he's the strongest candidate. You know, I want him over her. But I just want him to on those key issues, especially like you mentioned with climate change, don't worry about the narrative. Don't worry about trying to appeal to a moderate or liberal base. I mean, just come out and if you believe this, that's my question is, what do you really believe, or are you trying to cater to? I don't know. I don't.
Yeah. Well, Senator, we kind of went dark on the senator. Oh, there he is.
Or if you're catering. I'm frozen a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're back.
Okay. So it leaves a question mark. It leaves this question mark that says, where do you really stand? Because when it matters, I need to know you're going to be there.
Right. Well, and I would think that he's got to understand is that he's not going to pick up any votes on the left. He's got to know that. And that's what I've been trying to tell his people on the campaign. I've tried to tell people close to him. He's not going to pick up any votes on the left. And where she can pick up votes on the right. And there are times here where she outrighted him. And that's not, and she doesn't mean what she says, but that's the thing we must understand, is that Joy Hofmeister, anytime she's throwing something to pick up moderates, if you're listening, she does not mean what she says. She's going to go full force to the left, the way that she has under the radar over the past 3 or 4, 5, 8 years, right, that she's been in office. And we've seen that over and over again, but she's beating him in the head because he's waffling a little bit. And he's got to stick to it.
You can't have political answers. And, I think he's giving a lot of political answers. And
right.
People are tired of it. They see through it. And this is not to throw him under the bus.
No.
Because, again, done a lot of great things. He's going to be better than her. But if we're being honest and we're just critiquing, this is what we need to see in a strong conservative governor.
Well, and I think he would be doing better in the polls if the polls are right. If he would be a little stronger about that. But I want to get back to the debate. I just wanted to give you a chance to speak on those specific issues if you have to go. But please stick around if you can. Okay, at all.
A minute, but I'm going to come right back.
Okay, you're going to come back. Okay, great. So we're going to go right back into the debate. Riley, stick around. We definitely want to know your thoughts. I just don't want to. We're sticking with the debate, and if you come back, thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
I'll be back.
Okay.
Protected donors.
Question. We're either all Oklahomans under the same set of laws, or we have a bunch of jurisdictions. She can't even answer that simple question. Is she for Oklahoma, or is she for a scatterboard of jurisdictions in eastern Oklahoma?
And I can answer that.
We're going to stick with tribal relations.
Yeah, I want to ask Governor Stitt just one thing. Just to be clear, it would have to be a bank that is owned by a tribal nation, right?
What? No, the CEO of any bank or any tribal member. There were 9,000 cases before the state's tax commission that were just, maybe they worked at Quick Trip, or they worked at Williams, or they worked for this company, that were saying they don't have to pay state taxes. It's like I'm in a twilight zone. How would you like Joe neighbor here and Joe neighbor here? One is, we all go to the same high schools, we drive on the same roads, and one doesn't play by the same set of rules as you have to. It's preposterous.
Mm-hmm. It would be their income that's derived from a tribally controlled source.
No,
I believe
Why
that's
is-
what every code says.
Why is he arguing with her?
Anything in eastern Oklahoma,
Well, 'cause they're trying to
because that was what was
get her
federalized
elected.
after McGirt under what's called a reservation.
Well, we'll fact check that. Thank you to the Frontier for that. I could pull the link up on my phone. I read it the other day.
Somebody
we
tell
have the
them
next
we don't
question, Governor Stitt. I
believe
had the opportunity to
fact
speak with
checks.
the
Actually,
15 hard seconds.
we have to be able to have a governor who understands and respects the tribal sovereignty of the 39 sovereign nations in this state. We do not have that, and you heard it with this answer. And the second thing is, we have to do the hard work. There can be a win-win, but it takes work. With Governor Stitt, there's always a loser.
Governor Stitt, 15 hard seconds. Do you believe in tribal sovereignty for the 39 tribes?
Well, here's the deal. I'm actually a member of the Cherokee Nation. I'm proud of our heritage. We've got an open door policy, have lots of great friends that are tribal members. So again, yes, we all want to work together. But does that mean that I don't believe in Oklahoma's rule of law and the district attorneys in Tulsa being able to prosecute all crimes the same?
Our state is
that actually protects tribal members. Talk to the police and the law enforcement, the lawlessness going on. We have to have one set of rules. It's common sense. I don't understand why people don't get that.
Well, let me ask you just again, yes or no. I gave her a yes or no to you. Do you believe in and respect and acknowledge the tribal sovereignty of those tribes?
The federal government calls it domestic dependent sovereigns. And so absolutely, yes, they have sovereignty over what they have sovereignty over. It's a confusing question for all of us. But the Castro case that we won basically said that, yes, you have land, but it's still inside the borders of the state of Oklahoma.
That's right.
That's a big question. Are we Oklahomans, or we have 6 different jurisdictions? I think this is a very important question for people at home to understand the differences between you, my opponent and I.
Well, that's why we're asking about it, and I've got a question for you, sir. I had the opportunity to speak with the leaders of the 5 tribes just the other day, and I asked them, what question would you ask if you were me of Governor Stitt? And they all basically had the same thing to say. They said, when are you going to sit down with them and have actual meaningful conversations to find common ground, rebuild your
all a setup
relationship with tribes?
Yeah, they all are.
When's that going to happen?
Tomorrow at 10 o'clock. They're all on TV watching right now. Let's do it tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Amen.
No, at the state capitol.
Edmond or
at the state capitol, right in their conference room.
Look, man, they're hammering.
The fact that people say that we're not willing to talk is simply untrue. We've got people all the time reaching out behind the scenes, talking to one another, and for I think I represent Oklahomans as a tribal member and a 4th generation Oklahoman. I'll tell you this: most tribal members I know are pretty independent, and we don't like big bosses telling us what to do or who to vote for.
Let Storm and I know when that meeting happens. We'll be there. We don't have to record it, but we'd like to see it happen. Okay, Superintendent Hofmeister, 60 seconds, same question. When would you have those conversations, and what specific priorities would you have regarding those topics?
When I take over and win this election and step into office, it's triage. And one of the first things that we're going to have to work to restore is the compacts around McGirt. I will work with our new Attorney General to do that, and we will build on the trust and the respect that I've established. Let me say this to every member of a sovereign tribe in Oklahoma. I will not betray the trust we have established. We can have a win-win, and we can do what is right for all Oklahomans. And we know that it takes a will to actually come together and do hard work that we're not going to be able to accomplish in a 60-second answer. But this is the kind of work that requires a leader who can unite people around common ground. Every one of those sovereign nations wants education for their kids, safe and healthy communities, and the infrastructure for great jobs. And we are missing out on building partnerships and growing together, government to government.
Thank you. 10 seconds.
Yeah, sure. And Oklahomans, you heard it right there. That is so important. She is for federalizing Eastern Oklahoma. So no longer would the state be in control if she was governor. I don't think anybody wants that.
10 seconds, Superintendent.
It's breathtaking the way the governor processes this and sees it. Okay?
All right, on that note, let's go to the end of round 2. Thank you so much. We're heading into round 3. Somebody get me a drink ready back there. Okay, our final round is titled Burnt Ends, and we're going to ask each candidate questions regarding their records and backgrounds. 90-second answers for the round with the person asked the question.
I feel like he's debating more with them than he is with her.
Storm, you have the first question for Governor Stitt.
All right, Governor Stitt, in your 2019 State of the State address, you said lawmakers granting the governor hiring and firing authority over state agencies would ensure government is held accountable. You said, quote, "You know exactly where the buck stops, at my desk," end quote. Earlier this year, Embattled Tourism Director Jerry Winchester resigned after a legislative committee found the tourism department overpaid Swadley's Foggy Bottom Kitchen by $17 million. The state is now suing the restaurant for allegedly overcharging for construction costs of state park restaurants, something Swadley's denies. The question, Governor, under your own logic from 2019, does the buck stop at your desk for the Swadley's barbecue scandal? And is there anything you would have done differently in retrospect?
Again, the facts you just said are not true, and that's misleading to Oklahomans. We have 6 restaurants across the state. I think Jerry Winchester is a fantastic.
Which facts were incorrect?
That we've lost $17 million. That's simply not true. It's like if you build a home and you hire a contractor to build that home, and then you say the contractor overcharged you for this sheetrock or this piece of equipment. That's what we're talking about here. If the vendor overcharged us, then there's lawsuits against that vendor. But to say that the taxpayers lost $17 million is untrue. There's 6 restaurants and parks across the state right now that we're going to get a new vendor. There's an RFP process in place. There'll be a new vendor that'll open those up, and we will operate those. The state owns all that. There's 4,600 vendors that participate with the state of Oklahoma, and if we find out any vendors doing things wrong, we're going to hold them accountable. Folks, we will be transparent with your dollars. That's why we've built this largest savings account. That's why we're holding government accountable. So yes, we will hold these vendors accountable, but to say that we've lost $17 million is simply not true. The tourism department does their best job. There's about 500 employees there that are working hard for Oklahomans to make our parks top 10. And for political purposes, these folks take shots at these good, hardworking Oklahomans that stepped away from private careers to go serve their state. And I just think it's unfair, and it's all politics. You notice it all pops up on an election year, and it's from my opponent who likes to kind of deceive people out there in the public. And I just wanted them to hear directly from me on that.
Well, Storm, do you want to take this, or should I? Because I don't think he said, the script says overpaid. It didn't say anybody lost it. I understand that there's an ability to claw back that money, but you're saying that Jerry Winchester did fantastic work and that this went well?
They're debating for her.
What do you think about what Prince Swadley is accused of doing?
Can you believe it? Over and over again.
Are doing anything wrong and overcharging the state? Oklahomans want somebody to put a fresh set of eyes on every single contract. That's what we're doing. And when we found out that there's any overcharging, and it's a current lawsuit going on, we're going to hold those vendors accountable. But for you to throw out the numbers about 17 million, that's simply not true. That's not the number that was overcharged by that vendor, if there was a number.
Superintendent Hofmeister, 90-second rebuttal.
The governor repeated Harry Truman when he said the buck stops with me at his State of the State. But what we have clearly seen is the governor plays pass the buck. This is a governor who has squandered, mismanaged, and lost millions of taxpayer dollars on his watch with his appointees. Let's just talk about those facts. State auditor in 2021 shows $41 million in questioned costs among governor's agencies that he has control over. $20 million in missing PPE inventory paid for, never received. $12 million lost in Swadley's scandal. Can't even trust you with barbecue.
Governor Stitt, 45 seconds to close it to you.
Again, there's a $25 billion budget. We have 30,000 hardworking employees in the state of Oklahoma, 4,600 vendors. I think Oklahomans are smart enough to know that if there's a vendor overcharging us, there's lawsuits, and we're going to claw back that money, and we're going to protect the taxpayers. Nobody fights for the taxpayers more than I do. I want lower taxes. We have the largest savings account. She's never met a tax she didn't like. She wants to tax and spend and try to confuse Oklahomans for the momentum that we're getting.
Okay.
Thank you very
I
much.
have to correct that. That is a falsehood. I have never proposed any kind of misuse of taxpayer dollars. We have been transparent, And I believe that we have to hold our elected leaders accountable for those tax dollars they were entrusted with that they misused. We have the GEAR funds, which was given to all governors. And this governor has 31 million of the 39 million with questionable expenditures, lacks control systems, 30 million for a do-nothing pandemic center. And we also know that we have seen this governor had 80% of those expenditures that were given through GEAR.
Thank you.
Superintendent, thank you very much. You've had the sign for a while. Governor Stitt, she mentioned GEAR funds. Let's go there. 15 seconds, 30 seconds. What do you need?
Yeah, again.
Tell us what happened, because people said that was not overseen well.
Yeah, again, during the pandemic, the Trump administration, Betsy DeVos, gave $39 million to the governors. She gave $680 million to the public school system. So the real question Oklahomans want to know is, with that $680 million, why could you not keep two of the largest school districts open? I was fighting for parents in Tulsa, Oklahoma, their schools were closed for 355 days. Every single day, I would have parents call me just saying, Governor, my first grader is not learning how to read via Zoom. Yeah. Can you help us?
Good.
Thank you.
And that's why I was focused so hard. People are waking up to the learning loss now. I think the people deserve to know why you closed the schools for that long.
Thank you very much. We're going to get kicked out of here if we don't keep going. Superintendent Hofmeister, next question for you, 90 seconds. Last week, the Frontier reported that super PACs and dark money groups have spent more than $12.5 million attacking Governor Stitt and supporting you this election cycle, which is more money than both of your campaigns
One
have spent
question we
combined.
get?
You and others were arrested and charged related to dark money coordination in your 2014 campaign. Those charges were ultimately dropped. But with dark money again flooding the airwaves and billboards and mailers to support you from sources that do not have to reveal their donors, how can Oklahomans trust that you'll work for them and not unnamed folks who are running dark money campaigns?
Because I stand up to those who are mishandling the taxpayer dollars. I stand up for our schools.
She did?
I did that in my first
Shut 'em
race
down.
in 2014, and an underhanded politician brought false charges. Those were dropped and expunged by the DA, and I am proud to have stood up for my family, for our schools, for all of the families of Oklahoma.
You shut 'em
And
down.
this is a governor who wants to distract from his own record. It is his record that has led to many who want to see him out of office. I don't have a thing to do with anything but my campaign. And in our campaign, we are running on faith, family, education, hard work, Oklahoma values, and that's what we're talking about. That's what I will continue to focus on. And I will always stand up for the truth, no matter the cost.
Just real quick, who is the underhanded politician you referenced?
My opponent, which I beat in
in
a
2018,
three-way and won 77 counties.
Didn't those charges, you mean the 2014 opponent?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Governor Stitt, 90 seconds to you to respond to her statement.
Yeah, they're helping her.
I think it's a question we all want to know, and I know people at home want to know. Who's behind all these dark money ads? $20 million has been spent against me, attacking me, spreading lies and chaos and misinformation, supporting my opponent. I'll give you 20 million reasons why she will be beholden to special interest and not you, the people. Folks, I will always stand for 4 million Oklahomans. You elected me to put a fresh set of eyes on every agreement, every contract.
Who is Fount
hold
Holland?
government accountable. That's exactly what we're doing. The momentum
That's a loaded question.
Oklahoma, we're number 11 in people moving to our state. Our economy has never been more diverse and brighter with our aviation and defense and agriculture and all the great things that we're going. But it is a very, very interesting question. I would like my opponent to tell us who it is. We both know she knows who it is. We
No.
would like her to tell us
Actually, you
who
are
it is.
wrong. And here's-
And the
Superintendent,
people
45
Here's the
deserve it.
answer.
The people want to know, Joy.
If there is a way to get money out of politics, sign me up. Because it is what has corrupted this state. 8 out of 10 Oklahomans believe There is corruption in state government on your watch. And they are saying that they see your
She's not in
self-dealing.
government?
They see
Oh.
your cronyism. And I've had a front row seat to the corruption that I've witnessed under your watch. Oklahomans are sick of it. They want our state to move forward in a way where we put people first. We don't read off a national script like this, Governor. Instead, we put people first, and that we are careful with their precious taxpayer dollars. There are people who are paying taxes today that can barely make it. I have met with the seniors who are splitting pills, and they have to drive 80 miles to their doctor, and they can't afford it, and you've done nothing to help them other than empty promises and misspending their taxpayer dollars. I'm standing against it, and Oklahomans are going to hold you accountable on November the 8th.
Thank you very much. We got 2 more questions and then our closing statements. We're going to go to 60-second and then 30-second responses on this. Governor Stitt, as governor, you've appointed 2 men to serve as the executive secretary of the Commissioners of the Land Office, an obscure but incredibly important state agency that manages state land assets and distributes more than $100 million a year to local school districts. Both men have resigned. First, Brant Vaughter left amid questions about his oil and gas company's legal battles with the CLO, as well as the revelation that he lacked the advanced degree required legally for the position to which you appointed him. Your next appointee, Elliot Chambers, resigned after it was revealed he had a prior relationship at a company he contracted with to manage state assets. Governor Stitt, why should Oklahomans re-elect you to appoint a 3rd CLO secretary? And what do you say to people who question your decision to move to some direct investments with that money?
Just get rid of whatever that is.
First off, for people out there, the CLO manages the land that was given by the federal government at statehood. So that's what the CLO is. It's about a $5 billion fund, and then we've got mineral interest that we manage for the benefit of education. So that's what the fund is, and we need people that understand investments, that know how to invest $5 billion, people that have oil and gas backgrounds to maximize the profits for Oklahomans. And so that's what we do. We're going to try to find the best people. I don't play politics with people that we try to put in these positions. We try to find the very, very best Oklahomans, and then we recruit them to leave their oil and gas jobs or their investing jobs to come serve the state. And I'm so proud of some of the Oklahomans that have came in and served. We've got great ones. And those that are watching on television, get involved. We need more good people involved in politics. We cannot leave politics as just the career politicians and people that just automatically flock around this building. We need you to come get involved. Oklahoma has a bright future. We have a lot of momentum going right now, and we'll continue with that effort to bring people from the outside.
Thank you. Superintendent Hofmeister, 60 seconds to you as well. You also serve on the Commissioners of the Land Office. You've been in the executive sessions to talk about these matters. What can you tell the public?
So I will tell you, as a commissioner of the Land Office, I am very troubled by what has happened under the governor's watch. In fact, whistleblowers came forward, multiple whistleblowers, and they came to me and I sent them to the state auditor. And we were both very troubled. I called for an agenda item so that we could bring the information forward. The CLO director, his secretary that he speaks of, fired that person and settled with that person then in 30 days. We have a governor who refused to actually hold accountable in a transparent way the secretary. I called for him to resign. He did. He resigned. But then I turned over what I was ready to share in executive session, and the governor's attorney for the Commission of Land would not put it on the agenda in a legal way. And so those documents went to the DA, who saw need to turn it over to the OSBI. So that matter, we will hold Oklahoma taxpayers in a place where we are doing right by them, and we will hold anyone who has acted improperly accountable.
She can barely
Thank you very much,
speak,
Governor.
man.
30 seconds response.
You know, again, the people that are at the table, this was inside baseball that you're hearing here. People are concerned about education, healthcare. Let's actually talk about that. Inflation. Why are things costing more? It's the Biden administration, it's your record in education, and the people deserve to know, why are we, after 8 years, somebody in poor performance? In Oklahoma, if you're doing poor performance, we don't give you a promotion.
Storm, you've got the final question of the night.
Our Final question before closing. Superintendent Hofmeister, thanks to the historic 2018 state tax increase and rounds of federal COVID relief funding, there are significantly more public dollars devoted to Oklahoma's education system now than ever before. A year ago, Governor Stitt requested State Auditor and Inspector Cindy Byrd conduct a full audit of the State Department of Education to identify all revenue sources and determine if the agency and local school districts are complying with all financial reporting requirements. As was mentioned earlier this evening, you called the governor's request an attack on Oklahoma's education system, but during your time leading the agency, we've seen several instances where public funding has been misused, from EPIC to Seaworth Academy, child nutrition program funding, and federal E-rate fraud, just to name a few. The question, why would you not welcome Auditor Byrd's pending report on how education dollars are being spent in Oklahoma?
Well, that is because the governor doesn't understand at all what he asked for. These are all serious issues which we've held Oklahoma schools, charter schools, and those at EPIC accountable. And I've clawed back the money. But here's the deal. The governor wants you to believe that the State Department of Education has never been audited. Since I've been in office, we've had probably 25 at least audits. We pay $400,000 a year to the state auditor for those audits, and his audit is now going to be over $100,000 to do something that is an exercise in actually going into the schools at a time where they are dealing with COVID recovery. He talks about closing schools. I'm the one who stood up for local control. I'm the one who wrote a 100-page document called Return to Learn so that our kids would get back in school. He's the one who actually closed this state. He closed our businesses, he closed our restaurants, and he allowed our our hospitals to surge under a COVID.
Well, she's making stuff up now.
She muzzled my kid. Shut my
90
school.
seconds, Governor.
Oh, I'm gonna let it. Remember, it's
Well, I mean, again,
This is the last.
Oklahomans are out there. They do want to know, why was she calling the audit an attack? There's a difference between financial audits and performance audits. And the facts are, a governor had never called for an audit of public education until I did it. That's the largest tax spend of your taxpayer dollars. We spend $3.2 billion in our public education system. It's the record we've spent. No governor's ever spent more. And that doesn't include the ad valorem dollars. So yes, we want to be transparent. This is the first time it's ever done, but yes, there are there's financial audits, but there is a difference there. But you know, if we get back to the issues, what people are wanting to talk about, which she hasn't told you one thing, Oklahomans, why are we 49th in test scores? Why does Florida, who spends less per pupil than Oklahoma, and their test scores on the NAIPS are 17? What are they doing differently? As a leader, as a business person, we're going to challenge ourselves, and we're going to look at other states. There's no reason Oklahoma's not a top 10 state. We should be top 10 at everything that we do. We live in the greatest state in the country. I've grown a business here. We can do it. We can do better for our kids. That's what I'm fighting for. That's why I ran last time. That's why I left my company to come serve my state and focus on the next generation. And that's what I promised Oklahomans that I would do this time. Our momentum is halfway there. Folks, we want to keep it going. We do not want to go backwards to a Biden party in control of Oklahoma.
Superintendent, 45 seconds. To
okay. So I'm gonna cut it there because it's right before the closing statements, which we can go back and visit that. But Senator, are you still there? Can you hear me?
He looks frozen.
Yeah, am I back?
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, there you are. I see you. Okay, so I just went before we're having some technical difficulties over there, but I want to just hit on this point with you and get your thoughts. It seems to me that he was debating more with the people on either end of the stage than he was with Joy Hofmeister. Every question was pointed right at him, and they would argue with him when he would say something, which I think is just indicative of the way the media treats anybody, you know, right of mouth in this state or in the entire country. Just want to get your thoughts on that situation.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's an ongoing shame that here in Oklahoma we have this type of media who is constantly looking at ways to undermine our conservative base. And you know, I've told the media, the Oklahoman, non was it
Non-doc.
yeah.
Yeah.
I told them all that I'm not doing interviews with them because the times I have, what came out was a complete butchering of my conversation or highlighting certain things and manipulating it so that they could skew it, make it look a certain way. So I've lost all trust in the media here in Oklahoma, which is why I appreciate you and what you're doing. We need more of this true independent kind of journalism that's looking at the issue. And we're being honest. We're not just drooling over Kevin Stitt.
Right.
You know, we're breaking it down saying, hey, no, you missed it on that one. But we're also looking at it across the board and saying, hey, you know what, the way these questions are being asked, the way that they're debating with the governors, they're letting him debate argue and debate with his opponent. It's just
right.
So
well, he's up there. He's 3-on-1. It is 3-on-1. That's what I'm seeing. And he's bouncing. Even the fact that they're standing up there with the two candidates is ridiculous. They should figure out that they should put a camera somewhere and figure that out. But it sets a tone where he's up there answering their questions, and when they don't like it, and they didn't do that once to Joy, from what I could see, to where they do a follow-up or challenge her on what she said. And all of, I would say, literally 85% of the questions were geared towards making him look as defensive as possible, and with outright false information to back them up, right? Yep. And so I want to get to, and Riley, I'm going to get you in the conversation, but the senator here is, and we'll do some unpacking, but he's having some battery issues, so I want to make sure we get his commentary here. But the teacher shortage. Did we lose him? Yeah. And he's gone. Okay. Well, Riley, let's finish up what the rest of the debate. They're just going to do their last things, and then we'll talk about what happened. All right? Thanks, brother.
I'm sorry. Say.
Yes, 45 seconds before we move on to closings.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not sure where you get all of your information, but I will tell you we are 46th lowest in the nation in what we invest in the children of Oklahoma compared to other states. We are no longer at the top of the region in being competitive, paying market. I am also a businesswoman. I know what that means. That means that you have to invest in people. If we're going to meet the needs of children and see higher outcomes, we have to have teachers in school buildings, but not just a classroom teacher. We need to have more people on the team to support our kids' learning. School counselors. We need reading specialists. We need paraprofessionals, special education teachers. We need all of the people on the team that are going to be able to help our children meet and overcome their needs and barriers. And it is pitiful that we have a governor who doesn't get that connection, that we have to meet their needs, whether those needs are about the people or about the resources with just even getting to the school. We know that this governor is standing in the way, and he is not the kind of governor that is going to put people first. With him, it's always politics first.
Thank you very much. Let's go right on to 90-second closing statements. Governor Stitt, you have the first 90-second closing statement.
Well, thank you so much for joining in tonight. We really, really appreciate it. And I like to remind people how far we have come in the last 4 years. You know, when I took over, from budget deficits to now record savings and surplus, to 4-day school weeks and teacher walkouts, to now record investments in schools and teachers, a very bright economy. We're attracting companies and people from all over the country and really all over the world. You know, friends, my opponent, she joined Joe Biden's party when she couldn't see a path forward for herself as a Republican. But it's no surprise. She closed schools for weeks in 2018. Then she joined liberal unions to close our schools in 2020 for almost a year. Folks, Oklahoma's turnaround that you elected me to do, it is working. We've got a lot of momentum. We don't want to go backwards. But there are special interest groups that have lost control of the Capitol. They don't like it. They have spent $20 million on lies and confusion and chaos, attacking me and promoting her. And I'll give you 20 million reasons why she will never be beholden to the people of Oklahoma. She'll be beholden to special interest groups. And folks, I want to keep the momentum going. We've balanced our budget. We gave teachers a pay raise, law enforcement a pay raise, all while cutting taxes for Oklahomans. Thank you so much for being here, and let's go win this thing on November 8th.
Thank you very much. Superintendent Hofmeister, 90 seconds to close us out.
All right.
Oh, she's going to walk around.
Oklahomans, I'm going to talk direct to you. Oklahoma is at a tipping point. We have a governor who has run our state into the ground through his self-dealing, through his cronyism and corruption, and have had a front row seat. Education is on the ballot. Our rural communities are on the ballot. Freedom is on the ballot to make decisions.
Thank goodness.
All right. Well, that's the end of it. I'll tell you this. Again, the senator might be back. We'll see. He's having some technical difficulties, but I want to get Riley's thoughts on this. Your dad, man. Your dad. First of all, if you have questions for us and some insights that we can get, please go to YouTube. I put the link down there. You can do super chats. You can donate 10 cents. You can donate $1. You can donate $100. But that's how we can get some questions in about what you might want us to talk about with the debates. And we would appreciate that. It helps support what I'm doing here. So it appeared to me that the debate led into one main issue in terms of who we were talking to and about on this campaign. It was those three people against Governor Stitt. That's what I saw. They were asking him questions and pushing back on him, and every question seemed to be geared towards making him look as bad as possible, and just the optics of it. So just give me your thoughts on that, Riley. What do you think?
Well, it seemed a little bit like they thought she couldn't handle her business. Kind of like maybe the left thinks that voter ID laws are racist because black people aren't very smart, can't get an ID. It's like the soft bigotry of low expectations. They seem to not think she could get the job done. I think they were probably right. That's why they were helping. She did not sound good. She couldn't spit out words, and it's because, when you're not telling the truth and speaking from the heart, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
If you got to try to weave together and put together fake stuff to try to make it make sense, well, it doesn't sound as good.
Yep.
And Stitt sounded much better in that respect, but also, man, he leaves a lot of stuff on the table that just kills me because, she's the state. She's in charge of education for our state, and if he knows what we know, which he does, he could have hammered her. We're trying to be top 10, and she's holding us back.
Well,
and SEL in there, and she's trying to do all this stuff. He won't hit the softball.
Well, that's where I think that, let's be fair. She had some strong moments in this debate, but I think her strongest moments came when she outrighted him. He tacked towards the center or to the left on issues like education and the environment and abortion, and it looked waffly, right? It looked a little waffly, and she kind of went around him and flanked him on the right on some issues. And I think that to be objective, you have to admit that. But
sure,
in every other instance, and there were dozens and dozens of them, right? They were pushing back on him in ways that they absolutely did not on her, and often with false information. When it comes to the Swadley's issue and the numbers that were devoted there, she even caught them in a lie because they said it was 17 million and she said it was 12. Right? That's just an example. If you'll get these numbers thrown out in debate, and then you have three people throwing them at him and wanting answers, right? Mm-hmm. Jonathan Bolding, I have answered your question. Look in the chat. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's that's part of the issue here. And if he would remain strong the way Senator Merrick has said, then he could have fought back against a lot of those issues. So I want to talk about the prisons issue, and him releasing these non-violent offenders and closing off these private prisons. What do you know about that? Have you heard much about that, Riley?
All I know is that first of all, how do you close a private prison? If it's a private business, did he call it COVID there and then shut it down? Like, how do you close a private? Well,
and I think this is where he's gotten into trouble, is that that's a leftist issue of releasing nonviolent offenders and people, and he
into the game.
Right. And that's my concern here, is that if he's going to keep doing that, he's not going to get any votes from the left. He's just not.
I think that's what his advisors and maybe what him even think, and they think, they've bought into the lie that there is a large percentage of people that agree with crazy ideas from the left, and they have to play, they have to massage things to try to reach out across the aisle. We need to reach across and grab the truth and then lay it on the table.
Right.
What comes of it may.
Right. Well, but the strong points I think he hit was that he has done a lot. First of all, you can't say that this government this governor is defunding public education. You absolutely cannot. Joy Hofmeister admitted that there have been $3.2 billion go to education, the largest amount in the history of the state and in many other red states, right? And yet she comes out and says that he's going to destroy public education, and so that's things where she's speaking out of two ends of her mouth, and expecting you to believe both, right? And that and her being against the actual audit of what was happening in the schools. I thought she was for transparency. I lost you, Ryan. You all right? I thought she was for transparency. Well, then why aren't you for your audit? Why aren't you for the audit of your department? Because there have been millions of dollars gone towards administrative bloat in public schools that are, and I'm telling you right now, that are responsible for much of the wokeness and the bathroom issues and the political issues we're seeing started with these administrators who have a ideological push that they're trying to push into public schools. Right?
Yeah, I know.
And that's why she doesn't want to see. And I think the perfect example of this is the $35 million in federal funds she's pushed in to make more school counselors for kids who had a year off school. Okay, and most of them are doing just fine because kids are anti-fragile. They're going to adapt and they're going to rebound if you let them. But if you coddle them and try to make them feel like they can't succeed without you, guess what? They won't be able to succeed without you. And so I know you have something to say on this, because why are we raising the premises is that we're raising a generation of kids who are going to be responsible are going to be relying on authority to make their way through life, and that's beginning at school. It's beginning with these counselors and saying, well, everything down to you have to change your gender in order to be to be happy as a person.
Well, I think that's what's very that's the whole point of what they're trying to aim at. I mean, they want to create a class of Democrat voters, and the Democrat voters are dependent, and they're scared, and they're fearful, and they need the government. And that's how these people empower themselves. They create problems for their constituents, and then they come help them fix the problems that they created. And that's the whole cycle that they try to get people in.
Well, and I want to put this up because we have a smart aleck on here. It's Jason Risley. I don't know who you are, Jay Risley. How can we go backwards when we're already 46 in the nation? Well, the state superintendent, Joy Hofmeister, has been the state superintendent for 8 years.
Yeah.
For 8 years. And we didn't start moving forward in education until Governor Stitt became governor. So just want to point that out.
He makes a good point, though. in that he should have hammered her on that. Like,
yes, he should.
It's okay to admit that part of the government, of which he's not in charge of all of it, has problems, and you have to be willing to call, especially those problems that reside under the authority of the opponent.
Right. That's right.
He really let one go there. I mean, he needs to talk about how we have these problems in education and where they stem from, and call out the things that we have been calling out. And they're right on the table, man. She tried to put boys in girls' bathrooms. Like, he didn't even mention it.
Right. Well, and then the whole issue of the trans issue didn't come up. And if he were to just drop that on her if they don't ask the question, fine. But is it, what is a woman? What is a woman, Joy Hofmeister? What do you support underage kids being medically and chemically transitioned?
Yeah. Yeah, the cultural apathy. I mean, it's like they're willing to sacrifice the culture sometimes, or not engage in it because they feel like they somehow are going to be lambasted for having fundamentalist Christian views or whatever. But that's crazy. Or
even you're going to remove it from Christian views. You can just remove it from common sense. You could just call it common sense, right? There's a common sense aspect to this that I think he missed when it came to these issues, right?
But that's like I said with Laura though on Ingram. I told her, yeah, common sense is right, but who do we get common sense from?
Yeah.
So it ends up there anyway. But go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, you were on Laura Ingram?
Yeah.
But when was that?
April.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yes, yeah, because you stood up in front of, and people are wondering why Riley's on the podcast, because first of all, Riley's a dad. That's enough for me. I mean, he's a parent of daughters in this state being attacked by this situation, right? And that's enough for me. But hey, he's also been on Laura Ingram, so he can come on this show anytime he wants. Okay, so but it's he has a vested interest, as do I, in making sure that we keep our schools free of state-sponsored predatory behavior. Right? And that's what we're dealing with, is state-sponsored predatory behavior. That's what Joy Hofmeister represents, and that's what the moderators in this debate did not want you to see.
Yeah.
They did not want you to see that.
That's what I'm calling out.
And I wish he would just go, because he had opportunities. He had many opportunities to just say, no, I'm going to stick to, I'm the most pro-life governor in the state's history. I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to, I'm against the trans issue, the transition of children under the age of 18. We're going to push that. I've funded the education apparatus in this state more than anyone else. But you know what? I feel like we maybe need to do something else, and it's because of the person sitting right here. Yeah. And he did not go after her. He did not, and he had an opportunity, and I think he lost some points for that. Well,
here's the thing, dude. So he's not. It's going to be difficult for him to lose Republican voters because Joy. I really think that people in the state, vast majority, understand that this lady was never an actual Republican according to the platform. Her, the platform bending that the party bending she's doing is similar to the gender bending. You cannot change who you are, and she was never a Republican. And I think most, especially since COVID, I think COVID ripped the veil off a bunch of people, and they started to see that the Republican Party in our state has a good platform, but often doesn't vote for it.
Yeah.
And so I think he's really not doing himself any favors, I don't think, by not standing firm on these issues. I think there's only people, how we win, I say, is you stand firmly on the truth in our Republican platform, and you draw out voters that are apathetic and sit at home because we're not standing up for the truth. It is not reaching across the aisle and compromising with godless communists, which is what the Democrat Party has devolved into.
Right. Well, and that's you can't compromise. If you accept the left's premise, they're going to beat you every time.
That's right.
And we've seen that a little bit with the diversity issue and the DEI issue. We've seen that with the environmental issue for sure. Mm-hmm. because accepting that we can somehow turn back the clock on by lowering the change in weather over 0.5 degrees or over 100 years. It's a cudgel that's used by the left to say we need to force you into something that innovation is not demanding. And even if there isn't, I'm not a scientist, there is climate change, but why the climate is changing is the issue. And they seem to, and it's all man-made and it's all reversible, but they've been saying the same thing for 40 years. And, back it used to be global warming. Well, when the Earth stopped warming, they switched to climate change. Well, the climate has always changed. That's why we had an ice age. Okay? Yeah. And man has adapted and lived through it, right? And we will, but forcing that beyond what is necessary has become a governmental cudgel into making you pay more for less.
Yeah, think shovel-ready jobs. It's going to be, it's just a corporate take. As soon as there's a carbon tax, there's going to be a global carbon tax, and then there you go.
Yep.
They get to, you get to have a private business if we say so.
Yep. Well, and think about, I go back to cars for clunkers, or cash for clunkers. You remember that?
Yeah.
Back in, and now we're seeing all these cars that can track you over where you go. Right? Yeah. And I just keep thinking about, wait a minute. If we had all of those older cars that were demolished, and it's because when we gave them to the governor, they had to demolish them. You remember? They couldn't be resold. And these were cars you could work on yourself. Right? They were cars that didn't have computers in them. They were cars that ran off gas, right? And by demolishing them, you removed them all from the market when they probably wouldn't have seeded out for another 10 or 15 years, right? And so now you've got an influx of cars that since that point, since 2009, have come with these computer chips. And now they're talking about, like with Teslas and other electric cars, right? You can literally stop, the government can stop you by pushing a button.
They run off data, not oil.
Right. Yes, they run off data.
Is the new oil.
Yes, and if you listen to James Lindsay on that, data is the new oil. It is the new oil because, and you are the human capital that produces it. Right. But you remember Cars for Clunkers, man? That was. Oh yeah. It seemed so great, didn't it?
Well, a government program is as good as a government program can get. It's just really not. I went to an OSU career fair recently and sat down for lunch, and I had a guy sitting next to me, and there was two ladies. They were from Goldman Sachs. And I said, oh, and he must have been 19. He was, as you would call, diverse. Okay. And I looked at his name tag, and he's from New York, and it said Human Capital Management. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey man, what's that? What's human capital? And he said, it's like, and he gave me this. He was not ready for such a question.
Right.
He doesn't get that question in New York. Mm-hmm. But anyway, to hear these people dance around these questions, because they don't have a clue, man. They don't know even what they're talking about. They're just there. They were an affirmative action hire. They're a diversity hire, and they're being peddled into the
right. Well, but even if they're not a diversity hire, even if they're not affirmative action hire, they get fed a line and they don't think. And when you talk about human capital, okay, human capital, the way that they define that is that you are the product.
That's right.
You are the product, and what do you produce? You produce data, and that's how they make their money. Right, and they're doing that with kids now. That's what social emotional learning is all about. Is that there's a study that came out of, the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and it used Minecraft. If your kids play Minecraft, like you ever heard of that video game? Well, it's really popular. My stepson will get on YouTube and watch other people play Minecraft for hours, Mm-hmm. But in this WEF study, it says that Minecraft is being used as a social emotional learning tool to bend kids' minds towards accepting or valuing some things and not others. And then what they're going to do now, what they've already rolled out is wristbands or watches. They use these in China right now. You can look this up. That monitor your kids' emotional responses up to the minute. If you're wearing an Apple Watch right now, you're wearing one too. And because of all the medical data that comes through that, where your heart rate goes, how you respond to stimuli. Well, they relate that to what the kid is doing in the classroom, and they log that data. And they use that data against that child and the populace for decades after.
Oh, yeah.
And it's literally what they call a hacking of the human mind. Because then they're going to throw things at you, at your stimuli, through your data device, to bend you towards thinking and acting and talking in a different way.
In real time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to, in these surveys in the schools, they're using all this real time data to give the kid suggestive surveys in the future to bend them to where they want them to go and think and do. It's like, that's why I have a problem with Stitt a lot of times saying, we need to grab hold of the marijuana industry. We need to grab hold of industry. We need to, well, hold on. Like, does the government own all industries? I think we cede ground in clearly Republican free market areas where we are free thinkers. We understand free markets. We do not need the government to own a market. We need them to protect our freedom and liberty. And yes, don't allow Chinese nationals to buy up all our farmland. Yeah, that's got nothing to do with marijuana. Nothing.
Right.
I mean, so he's a good start. Stitt is a good start, and he's been a good governor, I'd say. Joy would be a disaster. But we've got to, like I said, the hard work is going to come once he gets elected. That's when the real hard work comes.
Yeah. Well, I think that the governor has been given a lot of bad advice when it comes to this campaign, and I think you can see that in the numbers. If the numbers are to be believed,
well, you got a handicap at 15 points or something, probably.
Yes, you do. But if the numbers are to be believed, this is too close of a race for Oklahoma, especially in a red wave year, right? Yeah. It just shows you that there's a lot on the right that are disillusioned with the waffling on things. Yeah. Where if he would have been stronger, he could have done well. And I think the next 2 weeks he's practiced the tack to the left. Mm-hmm. He needs to switch course and do what he believes and stand up for what he believes and let the chips fall where they may.
Just like we saw in Florida, the Democrats pulled out of that governor's race. They don't have a shot.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because he stood up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
that's a purple state.
Model. I know.
Right, that's a purple state.
And that's the model. You don't accept the premises like we've talked about and said over and over and over again. If they try to attack you on something, like you don't care about trans kids, or whatever.
No,
you just hammer the truth. Like, no, we're not going to mutilate children. You make the case why we should.
Right. Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. Is that if you allow them to state their position as the fact, and then you proceed. That's what we're talking about when we talked about accepting the premise. Right? Yeah. If you allow them to state their position as the fact and then proceed in the argument from that point forward, you lose. It's Sun Tzu. It's you don't fight on
unless you're James Lindsay.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't allow that to happen. That's how he doesn't lose, right? And if I were to debate any of these people, and I have, you always begin at the base. What's your definition of the word you're using first, right? Yeah. And okay, now that you've clearly defined it, most of the time they won't, right? Now let's proceed from the common ground state. Okay, what do we agree on? Okay, if you agree from that point on this, now what do we not agree on? And that's where you hit them, and they can't respond to that most of the time because a lot of their beliefs are rooted in what's called subjective reality, the actual denial of objective reality. And when you're talking about a child who's under the age of 18 being taken in to have their breasts removed and have their arms skinned to create a Frankenstein strap-on in order for them to be happy, that is, gender dysphoria is the only type of dysphoria that we affirm. Other dysphoria, the case mechanisms for it and the treatment for it are, it's not to affirm it, it's to assert reality in these situations. That's the whole basis for cognitive behavioral therapy, right? And so we can't allow counselors and Joy Hofmeister who spent $35 million to add double the amount of counselors to do just what I was talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, and anybody that's listening that isn't aware, the counselors at the schools that you had when you were at school are no more.
Yep.
They encourage us to have it. Go to their website. Go look at what the ASCA says, and the ASCA, just like the National School Board Association, the Oklahoma associations all follow the national ones. They're not Republicans that are filling these seats on these associations. They're being stacked with people who will bend and do whatever the national organizations say because they're going to get federal money. There's no morality. There's no truth in it. And Joy is going to push this stuff through the schools and into our kids' soft heads until she has an army of Democrat voters. I mean, that's the game here. And Democrat voters eventually are going to be global citizens. You're not talking about tribal sovereignty. We're going to have worldwide.
Right.
We're going to be all globalists.
Well, and I want to get to that issue on the tribes for a second, because the tribes here are being used as human shields, right? And when I talk about DEI, I talk about three things. That you have D, okay? Diversity is the human shield apparatus. They hold up any minority that they can and say, if you attack me, you're attacking a minority. That's it. And then inclusion is the inclusion of everyone that believes like them and the exclusion of the others, right? And equity is the goal. And equity is equal outcomes created by discrimination against people on the front end through public policy. That's what that is. So it's basically Jim Crow 1.0, ladies and gentlemen. DEI is Jim Crow 1.0. And diversity is the human shield. And they pick up the tribes in these situations, misrepresent actual facts in an argument for them, right? And say, if you're against us, you're racist, right? If you're against the tribes, you're a racist. You can't have any disagreement with them at all because they're the tribes, and disagreement with them makes you racist. And that's a Kafka trap, right? And so the issue with the tribes here and them endorsing Joy is because they are the linchpin of DEI, critical race theory, in this state.
Yeah.
And the governor, I think his strongest moments were about the issue with the tribes, because he laid it out very clear that we cannot have a two-tiered system. And that's what equity is trying to create.
Well, I caught, it's so gross. The few times I remember this, I've seen over the years, I can look back, the human shield with the diversity and like the minority stuff. Like when Piers Morgan stood on the dead graves of Sandy Hook kids and then tried to use them as an argument against guns. That's kind of stuff. I saw it today. I watched part of Megan Fox live streaming the Florida Department of Education implementing and voting on the Don't Say Gay bill, right?
Yeah.
So they're actually implementing the policies now, and she live streamed because, of course, there's going to be a parade of Rainbow Mafia show up, right? Well, they marched up this kid in a wheelchair that, he couldn't talk, couldn't speak, had to speak through a computer. And he was up there, and there's no way he even had these thoughts, man. But they typed in for I guarantee you, in his computer, and he was saying that, this is against kids and blah, blah. They just have no shame. When they hold up the victims, the supposed victims, they do not care about the victims, man. It's so clear.
It's exploitation. It's exploitation. And you can see that in the history of the Democratic Party, what they've done with the African American community, is they made a large portion of the African American community reliant upon the government by disincentivizing families and fathers.
Yeah.
So because single mothers would get more money from the government than mothers who had a father in the house. And so that's why I call this stacked incentives instead of a slippery slope, right? It's you're stacking incentives towards people being reliant upon the government. And once you've made them reliant, it's done. And I think that's the biggest difference between Governor Stitt and Joy Hofmeister here, is she wants to create Oklahomans who are reliant on the government and push them into that system. And Governor Stitt wants to create an economy that raises people out of that. And we can have disagreements between, individual policies. But when it comes down to it, those are the two visions. And I think it's very clear that the Governor Stitt is the person that we want to keep leading this state. And so I hope everybody watches the debate. And listen to what we have to say about it, but also just watch and think for yourself.
Amen.
So, Riley, thank you very much for coming on here. I'm going to have you on again
thanks
soon.
For having me.
And stay close to your phone, because it's going to be a crazy 2 weeks, and I'm going to want to bring you in and talk about some stuff. Cool?
Let's get it.
All right, everybody. Thanks. Like, subscribe, share the channel. Riley, where are you at on Twitter and stuff where people can follow you?
So I'm Christian with Logistics on Twitter.
Okay.
And Facebook, Riley Flack. And I've got a Truth social. I never use it. It's not very user friendly.
Yeah.
My phone number is. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah.
Hit me up.
Yeah, follow Riley, and he'll be back on the channel. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, Riley.
See you guys.